Hello and welcome to another Frenchman Learns About Japan reaction stream. And yeah, specifically the Shonen Jump, weekly Shonen Jump history, a series video by the great channel 20 Art. We've been watching that for like almost a month now, I think. Covering from 68 to the most recent video is 99, I think. And yeah, today we're starting from 92 since we stopped at 91 last time. Obviously getting into the 90s has been pretty interesting. Slam Dunk, Yu Yu Hakusho, and some lesser known work that were pretty interesting. Unfortunately not translated. Last time we talked about it, there was one about Sengoku Jidai Japan, and one was some kind of anthology of like horror story, but again they're like only partially translated, and for me it's like instantly a no-go, right? Because I would want the full story if I like it, so it would be annoying, yeah. But yeah, nonetheless, we're gonna continue into the 90s. We're doing maybe a bit of a longer one today, we'll see. You know, things have been a bit complicated in real life over the last week. Well, more than that, but let's just say the last week has been particularly extreme. And yeah, you might have noticed with like shorter stream and stuff like that, so, you know, we'll see what I can do today. As always, do check out Trenton Out. The link to the playlist with all the videos is in the description, as well as the link to my Discord, Streamlabount, Patreon if you have any requests or, you know, want to support me. And yeah, don't know if there's too much more to say. Let's see what happens in the rest of the 90s. I mean, I think I know the late 90s, yeah, like obviously like Naruto, One Piece, but early to mid 90s I'm not fully sure of what classic actually starts. Yeah, I mean, top of my head I'm not the best at like remembering like this is from that year and this is from that year, you know. Anyway, so by the way, I'll link the playlist in the chat. Here we go, and let us get into it, starting with 92.
Shonen Jump's golden age rages.
Wait. English to Japanese. I went too far. I always try to like go fast.
On, with this year being a pretty big one for the magazine, crammed with all sorts of hit manga as well as a lot of weird stuff you've likely never even heard of. So strap in and get ready as we dive straight into Weekly Shonen Jump in the year 1992.
Cool song.
Change Up by Shinji Imaizumi would last 21 chapters and 3 volumes following these.
Nice.
That's right, JoJo's Bizarre Adventures Part 3
Okay.
Stardust Crusaders would meet its end in 1992.
Wait, what happened there? Okay. I thought I accidentally like skipped or something.
Bizarre Adventures Part 3 Stardust Crusaders would meet its end in 1992 following the final battle with Dio. No more incidental stand users remain at this point, they've all been defeated, but so have 2 of the Crusaders, leaving Polnareff, Joseph, Kakyoin, and Jotaro to face off against Dio, with the distinct possibility that more of them will.
I guess as always I'll skip the JoJo recap, even though, you know, this is awesome stuff. We're more here for like the stuff I don't know about, right? But yeah, sorry about the noise in the background. Construction, I guess.
Change Up,
yeah. Diamond is Unbreakable next.
by Shinji Imaizumi would last 21 chapters and 3 volumes,
Okay.
following a similar formula to the ones attempted in Imaizumi's previous works, like Sori no Canvas and Kami-sama wa Southpaw, a tear-jerking drama with sports theming. Change Up would shift to baseball as its chosen sport, and would follow Toma, a genius pitcher who ended up in a traffic accident after saving a young girl, causing him to give up his dreams of going to the Koshin. Moving on to high school, Toma would shift his goals to being popular with women, and then encountered Kaide, a girl who he used to admire, who inspires him to yet again pick up the sport and surpass his injuries. Like his other works, Change Up
Yeah,
is
it's
a
pretty good,
humanistic story. It sees its protagonist overcome great emotional and physical difficulty, but in a more relatable way, with it having strong ideas about opening up old wounds. It seems fairly well regarded despite its short run, with it having plenty of Imaizumi's renowned tear-jerking scenes. The art is also really nice, but it is a shame though that despite Imaizumi being a reoccurring author within Jump, no English translation of his work exists.
I see.
Mon Mon Mon, lasting 84 chapters in 8 volumes by Tsunemaro, would be a
Comédie,
gag
hein.
manga following the monkey Mon Mon Mon. It seems to have a lot of crude humor, poop jokes, slapstick, and probably puns or jokes related to animals, with it dealing with monkeys a lot specifically. Mon 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 would accompany his little brother Mon Mon Chak as they go through various escapades. There's arcs involving a monkey prison, a monkey tournament, and I think later portions also might involve a zoo or traveling around the world, with them making jokes and meeting plenty of other monkeys along the way. In a dramatic twist, the final chapter, not published in Jump, sees Mon 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 drown after saving his little brother, which is pretty out of left field for a gag manga, but apparently Tsunemaro was going for an Ashita no Joe kind of sad ending. This is also depicted...
Yeah, but what even is this comparison? Like, Ashita no Joe is a serious life/boxing manga. This is a comedy, and then you just kill the main character at the end? What?
Beautifully in Mon Mon Mon's final volume cover, where a 3D model of Mon 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 lies underwater. The covers of Mon 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 look amazing, by the way. I'm a sucker for artists getting creative, especially in a multimedia way like this, and love how different each cover is. The scribbly crayon of the first one is delightfully childlike. The second volume's puzzle motif is really fun. The ones with the models are super cool too, and I even found pictures of them which seem to be from an exhibition of some kind. I also love the 5th volume that sees Mon 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 adorn a leather delinquent jacket, and the 7th volume that sees the brothers come up against 2 real monkeys. Gag manga often have some of the coolest covers out of any manga. The current day Me and Roboko is proof of that with its parody ones, but Mon 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 is no slouch either with all of these. They're just delightful. Yagyu Reppuken Renya would last just 10 chapters in 1 volume by Takashi Noguchi. This seemingly begins as a historical battle manga, but quickly leans into fantasy as it sees the Belga Empire, who aim to gain control over Asia, target Japan, taking out the Yagyu clan and kidnapping our protagonist Genbao's sister. 6 years later, he then goes to save her, armed with a new sword skill, traveling across the world and meeting a bunch of characters, including a few heroines, with Yagyu Reppuken being similar to works like Yoshihiro Kuroiwa, I think, another Cancel Jump author who would fill his manga with sex appeal, sword fighting, and mecha, which this would also be filled with. In its short 10 chapters, it would establish 3 main female heroines, which seem to be the thing most people remember about the series, as well as the mechanical soldiers, which safely push the manga outside of historical territory, despite some of the cast being based off of real-world people. It's regarded as an odd and indulgent work where Noguchi just crammed whatever he wanted into 10 chapters, resulting in a mess of a manga, but an intriguing one to look back on nevertheless. Explosion Space Bear-san, Tatabe, and Kikuchiyo-kun is a manga that ran for 21 chapters in 2 volumes by Tadashi Sato, coming off the end of his previous gag series Moero Onisan. This one would follow Tatabe, an alien from the planet Dio Crystal, who was banished due to him being an absolute failure. He then crashes to Earth and encounters Kikuchiyo-chan, a junior high schooler and the heir to a large conglomerate who is equally as pathetic and throws his money around everywhere. Together, the two bask in their own living together and cause numerous slapstick disturbances for everyone around them, resulting in your usual gag manga shenanigans. Video Girl Len would follow off from Video Girl Ai's conclusion, lasting just 12 chapters and 2 volumes by Masakazu Katsura. Both are often paired together, but I thought I'd split up the two as they're different stories, plus it means we get a small dose of Video Girls this year, as well as in the 1989 video. Video Girl Len follows Hiroma Taguchi and his best friend Toshiki Karukawa, both who have problems regarding girls, which one day leads them to Neo Gokuraku, run by the same manager Yota met years ago in Video Girl Ai. Here they obtain a video much like Ai's video, but featuring a girl called Len who similarly comes out of the TV screen, intent on helping them with their woes. Video Girl Len does a few things differently than Ai. While it is melodramatic and focuses on teen relationship drama, it tells a really nice, concise story with a clear message, which isn't as muddled as Ai's with its back and forth drama with Yota and the 3 girls he gets interested in. Video Girl Len attempts to create a story focusing on the idolization men have of women, the idea of purity, and the perceived value girls have by remaining pure and chaste. Its main character really is Taguchi, who sees girls, especially the ones he has a crush on, as pure individuals, and he can't stomach the thought of them breaking his ideal. Len comes around though and shatters this. I think my favorite scene might be when she just farts as a joke, showing...
I was literally about to say that. I was about to say, like, if you've ever been with a girl and they fart, you know, or burp, it's like, yeah, suddenly you realize, yeah, I mean, that's just a human being, and they probably have all the same kind of disgusting aspect as a guy. Well, not all the same, but you know what I mean, right? Like, that's really like the realization for a lot of guys, you know, girls are not like the divine angel idols that they might be portrayed sometimes, like when you look at celebrities or something. Not saying that girls aren't great. They're pretty great, you know, even if they fart. Not that I'm into that. If you are, good for you. But you know what I mean.
But yes, girls fart, and there's nothing wrong with that because it's a human bodily function. I just admire how straightforward it is, eliminating the gender divide and a lot of toxic perceptions that can build up amongst young people regarding the opposite sex or relationships generally. How it touches on the topic of virginity and chastity is also surprisingly mature, with Len at one point chastising Taguchi for giving up on the main heroine Ayumi because of the fact that she's not a virgin, saying, "Is that all love is for
People like
you?"
that are really something, huh?
In such a short time, Len touches on so many topics concisely, and for an author who's known for being pretty raunchy sometimes, Video Girl Len is genuinely refreshing, and I love the positive lessons it attempts to teach younger boys. Like Video Girl I,
it's definitely very unexpected for a jump manga of this time, especially. I mean, again, jump manga often tries to teach lesson, but I don't quite think in this realm of subject.
Also has gorgeous artwork. I really can't praise Katsura enough for his compositions, his character emotions, or his designs. Len also looks super cute. I love her hairstyle to bits. We also get a few cameos from Yota, who's grown up and can't see the video store anymore because no one stays pure all his life. It's such a good quote. It's never explicit in what this really means, but Yota seems happy, and Ai is even said to be doing okay off screen.
Also, it's kind of like a spoiler that they don't end up together because she is a video girl. Fair enough. There was no like magic at the end, so they can actually be together or something.
I like how they handled that, and I think this leads to Len being about dismissing society's perceived notions of purity as its main theme. It's silly, love who you love, take things at your own pace, and remember to communicate with your partner. These are things that Len pushes forward, with them all coming together and concluding in 2 snug volumes with an ending that really touched me. I highly recommend Video Girl I, and especially Len, and can't wait to see what Masakazu Katsura does next with
I definitely want to read both of them.
In the magazine. Baramon no Kazoku, or The Family of Brahman, would be Akira Miyashita's follow-up to the widely successful Sakigake Otokujuku. However, it touches length, lasting only 38 chapters and 4 volumes. It would follow the family of Brahman, initially a small household unit of 3 brothers, a father and grandfather, before expanding outward and including Brahman family members from around the world, each one being a descendant and follower of an ancient Hindu priest who used their powers of assassination to maintain peace and enforce justice. At the beginning, the manga would see the initial family take out threats, usually corrupt businessmen or people in power, after they've committed some foul deed, with them being controlled by the Brahman family's chakra to admit this deed and turn themselves in or kill themselves. It reminds me a bit of Shinji Hiramatsu's Black Angels, which we covered a long time ago in the 1981 video.
Very itchy.
Before long though, the series would expand, introducing the Masura clan, the Brahman clan's eternal enemies, and a potential world-ending threat. This would lead Ryu Brahman around the world, grouping up with various other followers from different countries, each having their own distinct chakra powers. It feels quite similar to Stardust Crusaders in all honesty, with a focus on an ethnically diverse group of characters exploring different countries and beating the
But frankly, if there's like something you want to copy, I mean, please copy JoJo Pantry. That is fine with me. Like, the concept is so good. you can really do so much with it.
threats that come their way, with Dracula even being one of the antagonists at one point. Sadly, Barama no Kazuko would end right as the main cast was set to fight the main villain, who aims to start World War III. It's a shame though, as the antagonist seemed genuinely cool, like a Yakuza villain, and yet we end on an Our Adventure Continues style conclusion when I think
That's so annoying. I mean, obviously there's so many reasons, like stories don't get finished, right? George R. R. Martin is like writer block, right? Then you have stuff like the author passing away. I mean, Berserk will be finished because, you know, someone is finishing it, but at the same time, personally, I think I haven't read the new stuff yet, but I think I'll never feel like it was actually finished because it was not drawn by Kentaro Miura himself. Then you have case of like cancelled manga, right? Where like, you know, the story isn't finished and, you know, I guess the best you can hope is the author maybe talking about what his plan was for the rest of the stories. And then there's cases that are like limbo, like literally yesterday I was like thinking about, I was really like getting emotional, checking out some clips of Umineko and Higurashi. I absolutely love the stuff from this visual novel. And if you don't know, in the When They Cry series, there is Higurashi, Umineko, and Ryukishi started like another one called Sikonia, but it's only been 8 years since the first volume of that came out, and he hasn't continued it. Bunch of reasons, right? I mean, he got hired to do the story of Silent Hill F. You know, he finally went mainstream, you could say, right? Also, what I haven't read it, people, from what I've read, like, you know, stuff about, you know, the story he was telling was too close to home with some of the wars in the world, and he felt weird about continuing to write it. But yeah, there's stories like that all the time that don't get finished, and whatever the reason, it tends to be very disappointing. Obviously, in Jump, I understand, right? Like, you know, if it's not popular and no one is reading it, they're not gonna let it finish properly, just cancel. But, you know, as we know, it's not always the case of like something is cancelled or unfinished because it was bad. I always talk about Tepu. It was a martial art manga I really liked about like a genius girl who gets into an MMA and finds out that, you know, it's actually pretty hard. And it does end at the end of an arc, but it still feels like it was only a portion of the story. I mean, I guess probably like this, yeah. It's one of those things where, like, you know, sometimes I wish I didn't ever read or check out anything like that. And sometimes you don't know, right? As you're reading or watching something weekly, you don't actually know that it's not going to be finished, but sometimes you kind of wish you hadn't gotten into it to feel this disappointment that it won't be finished. Even though I kind of believe in, like, it's about the journey, not the destination. I don't think it's like that every single time, but a lot of the time I can agree, you know? Yeah, anyway.
I think the manga could have wrapped up in 2 or 3 more chapters. Still, this might be one of my favorite works from Akira Miyashita, and I kind of recommend it as a weird companion to 90s Jump and Stardust Crusaders. I wonder if you'll get the same vibes as me if you read it, as this one is fully translated. Hallelujah by Haruto Umezawa would last just 10 chapters and 1 volume and see the Son of God, Hallelujah, cast down to earth by his father for his bad attitude and lack of responsibility in his duties as the next god of the human race. Hallelujah blends delinquent action and slapstick gag comedy, with the protagonist Hibino Hallelujah acting as a self-centered and self-righteous artist.
I don't know if I love or hate the name.
Who proclaims he's God while everyone else laughs at him. Despite his proclivities of loving all sorts of debauchery, he has a good heart and helps others, usually by fighting other delinquents and the main antagonist, a drug-fueled psycho with hate and destroy tattooed on his hands, called Kanzaki. Hallelujah is anything but subtle, but it does have charm to it, and by the end of its short run I did find myself enjoying Hibino's antics. I think the whole idea of the next god having to learn that humanity isn't all bad and needing to engage with them on a deeper level, gaining a sense of empathy, is also a really neat concept, but sadly it wouldn't be explored further due to the staggeringly short chapter count. Is what I would usually say, but somehow by the year's end we would see the debut of Hallelujah 2 Boy. An
Okay.
axe manga coming back is pretty darn rare. There's only a few examples I can think of, but Hallelujah's immediate flop was met with a sequel popping up within the same year it debuted. What's more is Hallelujah would be cancelled, a one-shot version of Hallelujah would come out within the magazine about 2 months later, and then another few months after that, due to extreme popularity, Hallelujah would return, with it running for 295 chapters,
Okay.
33
Okay.
whole volumes, lasting all the way until 1999.
Well, that's a freaking surprise. Then why did it get cancelled in the first place? I mean, interesting.
So how did Umezawa turn all of this around? What did Hallelujah do differently to go from mega flop to mega success? Well, it gutted its main character and the whole concept of God's son coming to Earth, opting to just be a normal delinquent manga
I see.
instead. Hallelujah 2 Boy would follow these same characters, rearranged and slightly different, or in some cases pretty much devoid of their core personality with Hibino. He and God are just real people now who live in a church, and Hibino attends a private high school with the goal of world domination. Really,
That's
this is
it?
just a way to give him
Okay.
something new. It lets him retain his above everyone else personality and attitude without him being a literal god. He's a lot less lecherous now, although he also feels a lot less human, which is weird because he's an actual human now. I'll be honest and say I found it really hard to like Hallelujah 2 Boy initially. I don't think it's very good and feels very disparate and all over the place, likely because its core idea was just ripped out of the manga wholesale. Hibino, for the most part, doesn't even feel like the protagonist of most of the manga, feeling more like a gag character who just sometimes appears now and then to crack jokes at inappropriate times, or just to fight people effortlessly as he never really loses, and it never feels like he's in danger. And I think it took a lot of time for Umezawa to really fine-tune how he fitted into the cast, resulting in him being annoying for the beginning of Hallelujah 2 Boy's run for me. The other cast members, Ichijo and Okamoto, feel a lot more focused, especially initially, as their lives and dreams are the core to the first few arcs. Over time, chemistry with these characters does develop, which makes them feel more endearing, and I even found myself liking Hibino more and more, with him feeling like Luffy before Luffy. Like he's legit the same. Someone you could just give food to, and then he'll just beat the shit out of someone you don't like, or someone who just did a bad thing, because that's just how he is. While the whole god aspect is gone, by no means is Hallelujah 2 grounded, with some arcs later on being especially unhinged. There's a fight with a bear early on, but things get really nutty with there being a whole arc revolving around this kid setting up a fighting game in real life, controlling a handful of fighters through an earpiece and getting other children to pay to watch these random delinquents fight his chosen fighters. One of the last arcs also sees a rich man.
It sounds like regular delinquent manga stuff. There's always some kind of like stupid undergrad tournament setup.
And try to prepare Empress Dowager Cixi's dark menu, which needs the blood of an infant, so the main
Cixi, isn't she like the last Qing emperor? Before like the fall of the dynasty?
cast fights an evil chef and some borderline JoJo villains in an attempt to stop the bourgeoisie from eating a baby. Moments like these, as well as some of the lighter slice of life chapters, are probably Hallelujah 2 Boy's highlight for me and made it a bizarre experience to read that let me enjoy it overall. Brief content warning here, since I'll be tackling subjects like sexual assault in a bit more detail than usual. You might want to skip ahead to the next manga if that's not for you. Sadly though, despite all of the silliness, Boy is weighed down by a lot of delinquent manga tropes, especially with its treatment of female characters and an abundant use of sexual assault as a means to get its cast to act. Michiru is one of the main cast members, but sadly mostly exists to be kidnapped, and this happens over and over, with the threat of her being raped or people making underground videos of that act to sell coming up more than a handful of times. The final big arc also heavily deals with this subject, depicting a van of women chained up that's genuinely quite harrowing. Boy at times feels quite out of place in Jump. Now and again the art can get really raunchy or brutal in a way that feels too adult, but this final arc really feels like it crossed a line to me. I'm not sure anything I've seen through the hundreds of manga I've covered in Jump reaches this level of messed up. It's even more baffling then that this chapter coincides with Luffy trying to fight Don Krieg of all people. Jump is at its most edgiest at the same time as One Piece is at some of its most goofiest. The final arc...
I mean, variety, right? They've always had variety in Jump, so, fair enough you can't really compare both.
It does have some merit to it though, especially with its final villain Zoo being an unapologetic sex offender, trafficker, and someone who lives in complete nihilism, believing humans to be no better than animals, so he embraces all of that, becoming an animal himself. It's really edgy and kind of goofy, but there is an idea here. For Hibino to come up against the epitome of hopelessness and nihilism, the very embodiment that humans are dark, twisted beings, if Haraluya Hibino kept with the Son of God angle, this would have had a lot of weight to it, I think. It would have made more sense why Haraluya keeps throwing these dark and twisted, horrible people at the main cast, so the Son of God could overcome the darkest parts of humanity and accept the good. Instead, what happens though, more often than not, is Hibino will shout something about wanting to rule the world or make some inappropriate jokes when the subject matter being tackled is a bit too serious overall. I hope that I am trying to convey the idea that Haraluya is almost something special. There's almost an interesting idea being tackled here, but it's lacking a drive to actually explore its themes, which leads to it being overly edgy, leaning into some pretty poor delinquent tropes that make it an unsavory read. I would struggle to recommend anybody read Haraluya. It's a forgotten titan of Jump's 90s, a work that can be funny or charming sometimes and has good art. I especially like all the music related scenes. Umesawa has a clear passion for music that really comes across. It just has a lot of problems in how it writes its characters though, especially its villains, which are all cartoonishly evil, and the aforementioned use of sexual assault is pretty off-putting.
The main character doesn't seem that interesting either.
In Haraluya's copy-paste formulas for arcs, which it never improves on. Haraluya 2 Boy would get a 25-episode-long anime adaptation in 1997, but at least from my knowledge, it's now an often forgotten footnote in Jump's 90s roster for how long it actually ran for, with some people remembering it fondly to this day. Even though it wasn't the best manga I've ever read for these videos, it was a very interesting one and a bit of a time capsule for the era.
Sure.
And continuing with polarizing manga, we have Bonbonzaka Koko Engi Kibu by Yutaka Takahashi, which would last 142 chapters and 12 volumes, being a gag manga following a high school drama club. It managed to last 3 years in the magazine, and in that time all sorts of weird and wacky things would occur, like the cast meeting dinosaurs, a whole sci-fi chapter with the cast just being different characters, and the whole cast getting transported into a video game one time. It has a penchant for weird and slapstick humor and can be surprisingly quite funny or charming, especially in its artwork, which has a sort of poppy style I'd associate with an artist like Hisashi Eguchi.
Like the backgrounds are like gorgeous, but I'm not crazy about the character art style.
Unfortunately, Bonbonzaka's main gag really drags it down and makes it an unpleasant read. The manga follows a new student called Shotaro who has fallen in love with the drama club's vice president, Makoto. Unfortunately for him, the drama club's president, Tokudaiji Hiromi, has fallen in love with him, a super deformed creature looking human who is extremely gay and predatory, with the main joke of the series being Hiromi being a predatory gay freak who constantly attempts to sexually assault Shotaro. Essentially, Bonbonzaka puts forward the whole idea that gay people are gross, and thus, isn't it funny if everyone thought the main character was gay, and ew, look at how weird gay people are. There is even a teacher character who gets introduced later on who attempts to correct Shotaro's homosexuality, directly stating it as something abnormal and disgusting, while attempting to sexually assault him as some sort of joke. When Bonbonzaka is bad, it's bad. It's
but again, it's like, this is a good representation of, like the way they don't seem to have like Shonen Jump doesn't seem to have an actual agenda, right? Because we talked about that they had like mangas that were like, you know, they had trans people, they had actual gay characters that, you know, like the author presented pretty well, I guess. And then they have one like this, right, where it's just like, you know, jokes and, you know, like we're gonna correct your gayness and all that. It's just kind of interesting. I'm sure some people are gonna say it's a bad thing, but I don't hate the concept of like, again, a magazine like that where like there's manga that just sometimes are like the too extreme. Like sometimes you have a manga that's like great at like portraying gay characters, and sometimes it's like the opposite. I mean, as always, I guess I don't have a vested interest myself since I'm not gay, right? So to me, like some of these jokes I might actually find funny, even though I understand why they're bad or something, right? But I just find it interesting that again they would publish work of like such different level of representation. I wonder if they even think about it. You know, it's like maybe they just don't care, right? I mean, I guess we don't really know how they approve stuff like this. It's Japan too, which again, like, you know, there's yaoi and all that, but obviously like gayness isn't the most popular thing outside of like the otaku media. I don't know. I always feel like conflicted about stuff like this. On one side, like I get the point of why it's like bad or harmful or something, but on the other side, it's like, you know, I'd rather people figure that out for themselves. And so, you know, the fact that in the manga there's both like in the magazine there's both manga that portray things well and some that don't. I mean, I don't know. I kind of feel like that's a good thing, as long as, you know, someone can like explain. Well, not explain, but like say why it's bad or good. What am I even trying to say? I feel like I had a good point somewhere, but I've lost the way I was trying to say it. Whatever. I think I got the point early on in what I was saying.
Absolute trash and demeans gay and queer people to a horrible extent. It's a shame as well because the next chapter could be a super silly and innocent one. I think Bonbonzaka's gags are generally really competent and funny. Its core gag though is incredibly bigoted and off-putting. Despite that, I can't bring myself to fully hate Bonbonzaka. It does lose steam by the end, but I did come to care for its cast
really good at
and
drawing
certain
cats.
characters like Makoto being a really kind ally type character who expresses immediately that there's nothing wrong with gay people. True love is true love. It's kind of a weird paradox. I really don't know where the author stands on anything. I think it's just meant to make fun of gay people for cheap jokes. Shotaro as well is just a nice normal guy, and he justifiably pushes back against Hiromi's assaults because he genuinely is not gay. I never felt hatred from him. I never felt like he hated Hiromi or gay people for like who they are, but he hated them because he was being assaulted constantly. Of course he's gonna push back because he's straight. Like, it's such a frustrating manga to read. It's like almost fun, and then it like hits you with something absolutely horrible. The best part of Bonbonzaka though are probably these little 4-1 Kun-Kun comics at the end of most chapters, which depict a really stupid dog named Kun-Kun and his family, mostly making fun of him because he's done or said something silly. I just really like how they're drawn, and they're a great distillation of the more silly jokes Bonbonzaka does best. One more thing I wanted to bring up as well is the covers for Bonbonzaka are gorgeous, with the cast depicted in different outfits of various famous stories or plays. They all look really great, and it makes me really want a manga that is like this, with all of the horrible homophobic humor cut out, where they maybe focus more on the drama aspects, which could have been a lot of fun. Silent Night Show would be Masumi Kurumada's final work in Jump, coming in at just 13 chapters and 2 volumes, a far cry from Saint Seiya and Ring ni Kakedo.
It is.
And even some of his smaller successes. Kurumada isn't a name we've touched on for a while, but in making these history retrospectives,
people have been making it's Pride Month right now, you know, like celebrating, you know, LGBTQ plus all that. And you know, there was this organization in Japan called Pride Fighting Championship, and so the joke in the MMA community is to say like Happy Pride Month, but then you post like footage from like the fights of Pride rather than anything about, you know, the actual Pride Month, right? It's kind of a joke right now. I don't know if it's a good joke. find it kind of funny. I don't think it's meant to be mean toward, like, you know, transgender people and LGBT community, right? But it's kind of a stupid joke, yeah. Yeah. Pride was cool.
It's undeniable of his impact on the magazine, laying the foundations for shonen manga as we know it, so to see a work of his get so brutally cut short is a shame. Even more so too, as Silent Night Show is cool, it has a lot of...
I mean, as I always say, like, you know, it's a miracle for an artist to get even one thing that's really good, is what I feel sometimes, right? I used to think differently, but the more I've read like a lot more mangas from an artist where I really liked, you know, one of them, or like an anime or something, yeah, it's not that rare. Like some people, they are, I guess, what you call one-hit wonder, right? You know, and that's fine, right? Like just having one legendary piece of art is already something.
Kurumada-isms of his previous work, it is quite formulaic, it has a plucky young character at odds with a huge organization of superhuman warriors, but it also might have one of the most engaging introductions to one of his manga that I've ever read. It sees Sho, a 13-year-old schoolboy, and friend Chirpy the Hawk come into contact with dinosaurs who want him and a fairy dead that belong to a secret organization called the Neo Society. What Silent Night Show then promises is an epic battle likely for the sake of the world against those who can evolve beyond human, embodying traits of our distant ancestors, kind of, like dinosaurs, birds, as well as slimes. Regardless, it's a very fun concept and Kurumada does it justice with some great art and full-page spreads as usual. This doesn't seem to be the general consensus though, with a lot of people considering it a copy of Saint Seiya, down to its shelters just being cloths, and both series being very similar with the themes of constellations being swapped out for evolution instead. Kurumada likely took this cancellation pretty hard too, with the final spread of the
tell that to all the sports manga artists who just, you know, I did a baseball manga, so now I'm gonna do a tennis manga, and now a table tennis manga, and now a volleyball manga, and now a soccer manga. I mean, come on.
Manga depicting the words never end in English, similarly to the series Otokozaka, which he'd eventually revisit and finish. Sho hasn't had such a luxury yet anyway, and I think an even sadder bit of text is Masumi Kurumada's final comment for its last chapter, which apparently just reads goodbye. Jump by this point had grown, lots of old school authors tried new series and a few more would try again. We've already seen Motomiya and Go Nagai leave after trying other ventures after their huge hits, Otoko Ipiki and Harenchi Gakuen decades ago, but in the next few years, big authors like Tsukasa Hojo, Akira Miyashita and even Tetsuo Ohara would return with a few series that would never reach the heights of their big hits, causing them to leave the magazine for good. Kurumada was one of the first of these to leave, and I think symbolically at least it marks the beginning of the end for Jump's golden age.
I mean, to be honest, I don't actually know, since obviously this covers only what they do in Jump. For example, like Masumi Kurumada, maybe he's done some great stuff afterward, but since it's not talked about here, you know, let's see. What has he done after that? Masumi Kurumada? Wait, is that his name? Oh, Kurumada. Okay. Kurumada. Why am I not finding it? Kurumada? I guess if I just do Sensei, it's not even telling me the manga. My anime list is great, but it's also pretty terrible for browsing, seriously. Here we go. Start date. Not anime, manga. So, best start date, let's see. Wait, it's still kind of out of whack. Sensei 85. Yeah, Silent Night right here. I see he's done more like Ling no Kakero and Senseiya, which are well rated. I guess he's just been doing like more Senseiya manga, but not in Jump, is what it is, I guess. In Shonen Jump, you know. Yeah. Okay, and this one is like freaking like 200 more chapters, okay. So I guess it's definitely just done more Senseiya, and that's the only thing that's been popular, it seems. Looking at this list. Yeah, it's 2014, Sensei G. I mean, it's just doing more Sensei. This one is 16 volume. I guess it's just done like Infinite Sensei, basically. I mean, it looks like he has other series, but they don't look well rated on mailing list at least. Yeah, and so far in the 2020s, I mean, like Sensei Darkwing, Sensei Re-Rise of Poseidon. Okay, yeah, I mean, it's just doing more Sensei. Yeah, I guess that's the other way to do, right? I mean, and again, I think it's okay. Like some authors, either they just never manage to do another good series, or they just basically always come back to their, classic, and do more of it. You see it all the time, yeah.
Age. Starting in 1992, we would also get something a little different that's always fascinated me: the beginning of a Chinese manga magazine called Formosa Youth. The early 1990s saw China crack down on bootlegging, which included things like
Really?
manga magazines, which pushed some bootlegging operations to start publishing through legitimate means, Formosa Youth included. This wasn't actually the first official magazine to serialize Jump manga, with at least Rem and Shonen Top in Taiwan doing something similar in 1990, but Formosa Youth has always stuck out to me as one of the biggest alternate Shonen Jump magazines from another country. I probably won't go through every single one as they come up, aside from Shonen Jump's raise into the West a bit later down the line, but many others existed in an official capacity, and I'm sure other countries have bootleg versions of Jump in their own languages too. It could be a subject for its own video, to be honest.
I don't really know about France.
But from what we did get, Hong Kong had Exam, Thailand had an analog to Jump called Sea Kids, as well as Boom, and Germany in 2001 had their own version of Jump called Back.
I've always just bought manga, never a manga magazine, like not even once. I've only bought like individual manga, yeah. Now that I think about it. I mean, I've never seen a volume of Jump in real life.
Banzai. Jump would come out physically in other countries too, like Norway and Sweden, but almost all of these endeavors would end in time, only lasting a half decade or so in the 2000s, consolidating into online formats where we have Shonen Jump today. Formosa Youth, though, is one of the only ones that's still serializing, having a selection of Jump's modern roster which they publish there in Chinese, currently featuring things like Undead Unluck, Blue Box, Kagurabachi, and this all began back in 1992, where they would serialize a small selection including Rokudenashi Blues, Yu Yu Hakusho, Hana no Keiji, Outer Zone surprisingly. I'm really glad China enjoyed that one too, and of course they would serialize Dragon Ball as well. This year we return to the androids who have recently awakened.
The Dragon Ball segment. Weekend Pass.
Ozumo Deka by Taro Gachon would be a gag manga lasting 1 volume and 10 chapters. The title in English is Sumo Detective, which pretty much tells you all you need to know. The manga followed Ozeki, a man returning from his service in the FBI to become a police officer in Japan.
His name is Ozeki. Ozeki is the second highest rank in sumo below Yokozuna. If you don't know, I'm a big fan of sumo. So like, someone wouldn't really be called Ozeki because that's like the rank, not the name of the guy.
Him having an overbearing love of sumo, to the extent that he solely goes around dressed as one and even has a sumo ring in his police office. Gags were likely quite nonsensical, involving sumo, with Ozeki forcing criminals and ne'er-do-wells into sumo matches with him as some weird form of rehabilitation. The artwork is also quite unique. It's quite chunky and amateurish, but also charming. I think very suitable for a comedy manga. Chibi would be Yoichi Takahashi's next sports manga, with him continuing to try other sports between his original and rebooted runs of Captain Tsubasa. This time we would get a boxing manga lasting 53 chapters and 6 volumes total, seeing protagonist Satoshi Nakamoto, a third-year junior high student who is bullied over his height, fight back and join a boxing club. This is a real underdog story, really zoning in on the shonen sports trope of someone having a small stature. Instead of focusing on them not being able to compete properly, it's more of an internal struggle as Satoshi seems genuinely frustrated and upset about his own body and how others treat him due to it, channeling all that emotion into the sport of boxing so he can feel better about himself as well as show others that despite his height he can become strong. It looks like a really cute little manga,
sounds like
and
the
I
most
want to
classic
praise Takahashi for making a protagonist who
manga.
doesn't look exactly like Tsubasa, since most of them do.
Mm.
While it didn't end up lasting that long, and compared to Captain Tsubasa it's fairly forgotten, it did make a small impact and seems fondly remembered by some, which feels appropriate for Little Chibi. Ultimate Pervert Mask, or Hentai Kamen, by Keishu Ando with...
Wait, it was a Shonen Jump manga? I've heard of Hentai Kamen before, but I think it was because there was a live action or something, and a long time ago I had seen the trailer and I was like, what the fuck did I just watch? We're talking about like 15 years ago or something on YouTube. I did not realize it was a freaking Shonen Jump manga.
Last 54 chapters and 6 volumes, being a fairly well-known manga I think, or at least to me. Hentai Kamen always popped up when I started to get into anime and manga, so I was surprised to find that it wasn't all that long, although it did still fill Jump's pages for a whole year. Hentai Kamen would be a gag action series seeing Kyosuke Shikijo, a bit of a kendo tryhard, find himself involved in a bank robbery one day. After beating one of the robbers in the changing rooms, he puts on what he thinks is the robber's mask, but instead it's a used pair of panties, transforming him into the ultimate pervert mask. Most of Hentai Kamen follows this formula of Kyosuke putting on a pair of panties, transforming, and then beating up the bad guy, with them usually ending up face first in his junk for whatever reason. I've got to be a bit honest, this got really old fast, and initially I thought it would be...
I mean, it's a tokusatsu thing, I guess. Except he's not really transforming per se.
more creative, since Kyosuke's mother is a dominatrix, and I thought it would explore kink more as jokes. There is a few instances where Hentai Kamen uses wax or whips to fight enemies, but this is like beginner level BDSM. I thought there would be more of an exploration into sexual deviancy and kink.
If you want that, there's a manga called Nanato Kaoru, which is literally about that. A guy and a girl who really get into BDSM and, you know, all the rope stuff and everything. I mean, it also kind of gets sold eventually, right? It's a very ecchi manga, but also it teaches you about aspects of it, which is interesting for a good part of it, but then I think eventually, like, you know, it just becomes repetition. I mean, there's only so many times I can see the main character, like, get horny tying up the girl and do nothing more than that, you know? I guess I'm not really into that myself. Like, it's sad for 2 seconds, but then, you know, do something. Yeah. I guess I'm not quite into BDSM.
Kink overall. Even if you don't want to explore that at a thematic level, then just use it for jokes, since this is a gag manga, but instead it remains formulaic throughout, throwing a few new cast members in here and there, and the highlight for me was a chapter where Arnold Schwarzenegger is just a character who's friends with Kyosuke's mother. He's been on the cover of Shonen Jump, something I bring up a lot because it's a neat little fact and just something really weird. So he has more ties to Jump than you might initially think. I just find that really bizarre. Hentai Kamen's legacy might be what's most special about.
I mean, is it really bizarre? Japan loves the guy. I follow a lot of YouTubers who often check out, like, we do they call it like simultaneous viewing, but reaction, you know, timer reaction to his movie. Commando, especially like the movie Commando, where it's just him as a one-man army, is ultra popular in Japan to this day. Yeah. Commando, they check it out all the time. Terminator is also popular. I mean, again, like, it's literally like a live action anime character. I mean, he's more buff than like many anime characters, so it's not surprising they like the guy.
About it though, I think it's generally remembered for being a bit weird, a very visually distinct symbol of Japan's erotic comedy, which might not translate to other cultures and thus has become a little iconic. It's also had multiple one-shots post its initial run, as well as 2 live-action films, which might be a better way to experience Hentai Kamen, as I felt the manga was quite drawn out and a bit too repetitive. Though, if you like goofy erotic comedies, this might be your thing and it's fully translated should you want to give it a go.
I mean, sweet tokusatsu though, again, like, this is kind of a tokusatsu series, and, you know, I've only seen a few Kamen Rider and Tiga and Gao, but, you know, formulaic and somewhat repetitive is part of it, right? Every episode there has to be a fight that usually goes the same way of the main character kind of losing, then kind of winning. You know, it's part of the genre, I guess.
Psycho Plus lasted 11 chapters in 2 volumes and would be the first manga by Ryu Fujisaki, an interesting artist for the magazine, who is a bit of an underrated character, creating quite a few weird little manga for Jump, which I'm really excited to talk about.
I don't think I recognize any of them.
Psycho Plus would follow Midori Maru, a green-haired, green-eyed boy who has a complex over his appearance, but one day a capital G gamer girl
Gamers, gaming.
by the name of Yukino compliments his hair, and then they become friends, with the two playing video games together from then on. Midori Maru develops a crush on her, but she only dates people who can beat her at games, prompting Midori Maru to get better, with him finding a game called Psycho Plus, which he intends to challenge Yukino to a game of. Curiously, only he can play this game though, and thus begins his exploration into what Psycho Plus truly is. The manga seemed to balance slice of life, romance, and supernatural battle elements, as Psycho Plus turns out to be a game designed to heighten the psychic powers of specific people throughout Earth in order to save it. This development that Midori Maru is one of 12 green people capable of wielding psychic powers comes very late though, as the manga was tragically cancelled early on. It's a real shame, since Ryu Fujisaki was a very promising rookie at the time and would later hit it off with Hoshin Engi in a few years. I'd say he can be characterized as making a manga that deviate from what's normal or popular, with Psycho Plus featuring an atmosphere unlike anything else in Jump, being more pensive and featuring the main character's emotions and thoughts more than any other manga at the time. Ryu Fujisaki's distinct art style also shines here. The way he illustrates characters feels very unique, and I think Psycho Plus's artwork is especially charming. I can't really point to anything specifically it reminds me of, maybe older shoujo manga, but all in all it ends up adding to the unique atmosphere Psycho Plus had, which combined with the video game and psychic elements makes it a very intriguing entry of Shonen Jump in 1992.
Sure.
Chikarabito Densetsu Oni.
Oh shit, some more sumo. Unfortunately, I've only been a fan for 7 years, I think. So yeah, the rest stuff from the 90s I won't know.
Niwo Sugumono, or Legend of Strong Men, the Oni's successor, would last 21 chapters in 3 volumes, being written by Masaru Miyazaki and with art by none other than Takeshi Obata. This would be a shorter biographical work following 2 sumo wrestlers, Takanohana Koji and Wakanohana Mas.
Oh, okay, so it's the real one, okay. I mean, I know those guys at least, yeah. 2 legendary wrestlers, yeah.
Saru, as they begin their careers in earnest. The 2 were brothers who were raised through the...
Okay, I don't know if I want to show this. As a sumo fan, I can tell you that the Sumo Association and the NHK are basically a murderous organization as far as copyright goes. Even a bit of footage and you might lose your channel.
His teens and setting numerous age-related records. The manga focuses on the idea of legacy primarily, passing down the torch and other sports-based themes, with it quickly...
The only sumo manga I've read to completion was Bakido, like the latest, well, last part of Baki. Not the one running right now, but the one before that, which was, you know, about Baki characters fighting some sumo wrestler. I know there was also I think it's a Shonen Jump, Sumo one from the 2010s that was popular. I tried the anime real quick, but I think that was before I was into sumo, so I would need to try it again.
Shifting focus to the brothers' earlier years with their father's final match, seeing him pass on his legacy to his boys. I really liked how Legend of Strong Men acts as a time capsule of sumo at the time, providing you with plenty of info on famous wrestlers, with a focus on the brothers, their development, and a story about inheritance, which acts as a history.
Man, like for anyone into sumo, like imagine they made a manga about Akuo. Could they even do it? If you guys don't know Akuo's show, it's probably like the greatest Yokozuna of all time and the greatest sumo wrestler of all time, Rikishi. He became Yokozuna in like the mid-2000s. And he retired like in 2021, I think it was. And he had such a dominant run, like winning an ungodly amount of victories and championship. I mean, he was so freaking dominant, like 2 times during his career. He went basically undefeated for like a year. Just insane story. I don't know if it would translate well to a manga because I guess he literally wins too much, right? But at the same time, I guess you could still do a good manga, not portraying like every part of the story, but the biggest part, right? Like the early rise of Akuro, the early rivalry with Asashoryu, then the fall of Asashoryu, leading to like Akuro kind of being alone until the rise of like Kisenosato, Adamafuji, Kakuryu, and then eventually like all the injuries and him reaching like the mid-30s and everything catching up to him, and then the ultimate comeback, to like at the end, right, the final battle against like Toledo Fuji. I mean, can you even imagine? That would make a good manga, yeah. That's something that like portrays every part of his story, but maybe the big moments. I think that would be great, yeah. That would be great. I want an Akuro manga.
History of sumo in microcosm. Takeshi Obata has always had a great art, but I feel like it's really solidified by this point, and he's proved himself as a great illustrator, especially when drawing people and expressions. I also find it quite interesting that the brothers had a manga about them in 1992. It would have been culturally relevant with both of them debuting in 1988. Their relevance though would stretch into the 2000s, with it sounding like family drama and other events stretched into their later years and almost to present day.
To say the very least, and I don't even have the full story, it's a mess. It's a mess.
I'm not familiar with sumo, but from the onset of their careers it seems like to present
I think that's
day. I'm not familiar with sumo, but from the onset of their careers it seems like the two were destined to be legends, and I suppose if there was a desire for it, I could see this manga being revisited, as much of the history of these two sumo lies beyond this manga.
I actually want to read it because, again, like finding actual match and event from back then is kind of impossible. There's no great sumo archive, at least, and the Japanese Sumo Association absolutely ate the West, and people were uploading like any of it on YouTube. So it's like, even if you wanted to watch some of the old tournaments, I mean, it's an absolute mess to try to find anything. Some people might post like a single match or something, but yeah. So a manga like this might be a good way to do it.
This is also something fully translated and is a very interesting piece of Jump and Sumo history, which I encourage others to read.
I do want to, so I should write it down. Was Modeka, was it? No, 43 minutes. Oh, Legend of Strongman, yeah, this one. I will write it down.
Translation Group did an excellent job here, and while it's not a Jump manga, I do want to briefly shout out their work on Haru Kanara Ring, an older manga focusing on women's Joshi wrestling. If you want a shorter, older manga about combat sports, then these two are pretty great.
All I can say is, if you have any interest in sumo, do give it a try. Even though it's kind of a mess, if you want to watch a tournament, which one ended recently, but when there's one going on, which you can find highlight on the NHK Sumo. If you type that, you'll find the Grand Sumo highlight page, and when a tournament is going on, which is over 15 days, they'll post like an highlight of every day with English commentary. I mean, I guess right now there's still the stuff from the latest one, which was a very interesting tournament because like so many people got injured. It was kind of like insane, but it was still fun to watch. So yeah, you can watch the highlights over here on this website if you wanted to get into it, or if you want to get into it for the story. There's this channel on YouTube called Chris Sumo. You can watch some of his videos, which might do some kind of stories about the wrestlers, which I think is the best way to get into it, caring about the individuals.
Show. 1992.
Also, he also has like a Yu Hakusho recap part now. Okay, so many recap parts. I'll pass, but I guess this is Dark Tournament. Yeah, Dark Tournament. I said before, it may be controversial, but for me this is the peak. After that it goes downhill. I really did not enjoy the arc as much after this one. And then JoJo, okay. Oh yeah, Diamond is Unbreakable is starting. And then he has the roster talk, but I guess we can pass that. Okay, so that was 1992. Some interesting stuff. Yeah, definitely a lot of stuff I didn't know about. So let's go into 93.
Shonen Jump's history rages on, still at the peak of its golden age as works like Dragon Ball, Slam Dunk, and Yu Yu Hakusho reach some of their highest heights. But there's so much more to the magazine than its biggest hits. Other manga are beginning and ending constantly, and this year in particular is full of a lot of quirky little new series and events. So let's see what Shonen Jump had to offer in the year 1993.
I read the song.
JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Part 4 would...
Okay, so more JoJo. Yeah, a lot of JoJo recap. Huh? I mean, again, I love JoJo, but I'm just not here for recaps. Understandable, right?
Kaze by Hideaki Matsune would be a fantasy adventure manga lasting 11 chapters and 1 volume. The plot followed Zeno, a swordsman known as the Red Beast, who partners up with a blacksmith's daughter named China in order to dispose or protect a magical sword which all sorts of people are after for nefarious purposes. Due to how quickly it was cancelled, it never really got to reveal much of anything about its plot, including what the sword would be used for or any of the characters' backstories that had been built up, with it ending with Zeno seeing Sheena off by boat and continuing his adventure alone. I do think it's pretty funny that the manga starts off with the protagonist taking a piss though. It's drawn really beautifully and I can't help but love that juxtaposition, and it's the biggest thing that stood out in this manga for me.
Wow.
Genshoku Chojin Paintman would be another 11 chapter long speedy axe, lasting 2 volumes this time, by Fumihiko Ota. This would see an elementary school teacher, Ayato Ishiki, be bestowed with the powers of primary colors by Prince Quin Dewol II, an alien from another planet, in order to combat incoming invaders. Due to its short run, Paintman would only ever fight one invader, with the story being wrapped up in an extra 12th chapter included in the volume release. I do really like the idea of Paintman's powers though, having different colors that represent powers like muscle strengthening blue or high speed flight red, which could be then combined into something like Kai manipulation purple. It's the basis for a fun and artsy battle system and perfect for a transforming hero type character, but sadly this one just wasn't meant to be in the pages of Jump. Starting in issue 15 of 1993, a familiar face would return, Tsubasa, with Yoichi Takahashi beginning Captain Tsubasa World Youth Tokubetsu Hen. This would be a 5-chapter miniseries bridging the gap between the old Captain Tsubasa from the 80s and the upcoming Captain Tsubasa World Youth Hen in 1994. Takahashi at this point was still serializing chibi within the magazine, but this would see him gear up to return.
That's something that so little sports manga seems to do, and it always annoys me. Like, they always focus on like just a little bit of the life of a character in their sport, right? So it tends to be, just like when they're young usually. I wish more sport manga had like a full life of a character in the sport,
And his magnum opus. World Youth Tokubetsu Hen would act as a small taster, letting the magazine build up hype for its return by pitting Tsubasa and friends against the exceedingly strong Dutch youth team. Perhaps this part got included in later volume releases, but it seems a bit forgotten about compared to the main Tsubasa series, so the images I could find weren't the best quality. Regardless, I'm excited to see a classic Jump icon return, so I can talk about Tsubasa again in the next video. Vice would be another cutthroat cancellation from Jump, only lasting 10 chapters in 1 volume by Yoshihiro Yanagawa. This would be a delinquent gag manga that saw Takuro Horikawa get into all sorts of trouble but proclaim he would change his ways after falling in love with a girl called Sayuri. Due to its short length, most of what I could find about it was people saying it was mediocre, likely not making a big first impression, as other big delinquent manga like Hallelujah to Boy and Rokudenashi Blues ruled that part of the magazine at this point. It did have a cool sense of style with the characters' outfits, and I love Takuro's bandana. I'm really scraping the barrel here, but yo, is that Saul Bad Guy? Finally, we have a manga that managed to last longer than 3 months in Ninku by Koji Kiriyama, which ran for 55 chapters only to be suspended, not cancelled, to be then revived later on, getting a further 27 chapters within Jump for a total of 9 volumes under the name Ninku Second Stage, not to be confused with Ninku Second Stage Eto Hen, its sequel, which added a further 71 chapters and 12 volumes.
Well done.
All of this was pretty confusing to figure out out, to be honest. Ninku is a bit of an odd duck generally. It's a work that's not forgotten, nor is it culturally huge. It did decently within the magazine and is remembered today for being Naruto's older brother in a sense. A popular ninja manga before one of Jump's titans, and something that would supposedly inspire Masashi Kishimoto to a degree as well. It's also sadly a work that has very limited English availability, only having a handful of chapters translated into English, with it also possessing a 55-episode anime and movie that deviate from the source material. In regards to the plot, Ninku would follow Fusuke, a ninja of the now defunct First Ninja Corps, who live in a world post their disbandment, where the evil empire that fought them previously has won the war, brandishing those who practice Ninku as villains. Fusuke, alongside his penguin friend Hiroyuki, now search for the remaining Ninku captains to build up some sort of resistance, all the while fending off new Ninku practitioners with evil agendas. From what I've read, it's a lot of fun. Fusuke is a lovable protagonist and a cool character. The art and overall vibes of the series were pretty impressive in an interesting way as well. Others have noted it gets a bit repetitive after a while, and going back to its suspension,
that is the most long-running manga, come on.
It seems Koji Kiriyama had trouble writing for Ninku, which may have led to this. It's an instance where seemingly Jump really wanted Ninku to succeed. It seemed to be well received, and its anime would go on to be decently popular, replacing Yu Yu Hakusho's TV slot and even keeping the majority of Yu Yu Hakusho's animation staff, but the manga just didn't come together for the author, which is a shame, as there's totally an alternate universe where Ninku could have been big, I think. It's pretty evident its production was troubled based on it being rebooted and the reboot having a hiatus in the middle of it, with the manga remaining unfinished for a good decade before Kiriyama would begin the manga's sequel in 2006. Even if it is a bit of a train wreck, this is a manga I'd love.
I was talking about stuff like that earlier. I was also like thinking about the manga Nana, that is always talked about as like, you know, an absolute masterpiece, even though it's not finished. And I had never really heard like the details, so I was looking into it recently. I think it's because I made a post of like which one is the best shoujo manga on my channel, and someone said Nana, and so I remembered about it and went to research a bit, and yeah, it's been almost 20 years or something that it's been on hiatus. Obviously, like it's because the author has like big health issues that are not specified. But it's one of the things where, yeah, she has said that she'd love to finish it, but obviously, like, there's no, you know, you really can't be sure, right? Like, will she ever be okay to finish it, or will it just stay suspended until she passes away, and then it's clearly, like, a unfinished thing? It's one of those things, yeah. I'm interested about it, but also I don't really want to read it because it's unfinished, you know? It's, there's quite a few manga like that, yeah.
To read more of, just look at Fusuke's goofy face. He really deserves a shot, I think. If you want to know a bit more about Ninku, I definitely recommend Shabe's video on the series. It's very informative and delves into the anime a lot more, and I'll leave a link to it in this video's description. Up next, we have one of the more obscure pieces of Jump media I found, with the 1993 Game Boy game Cult Jump. This would be a quiz-based title that saw the king of Jump be imprisoned, and only you, with your extensive knowledge of Shonen Jump trivia, has the power to save him.
Has Jump ever had a good game? I actually wonder, like, so far it's talked about some of the early, like, you know, little RPG with a lot of character from Jump, but I assume that they're like, you know, not everything very good, right? Obviously I know that there's some good game of Dragon Ball, One Piece, Naruto, but what I mean by a Jump game is like an actual Jump game, maybe some kind of like crossover. I know there was Jump Force some years ago, but I think it wasn't good. Yeah, I wonder if they've ever had some kind of good crossover game of the magazine.
It featured 50 full stages of questions you'd need to answer, all about Shonen Jump, featuring many of its most popular series at the time, with the 7 characters featured on the cover being the same as 1991's Famicom Jump 2, minus Tar-chan being swapped out for Keiji from Hana no Keiji. It seemed like a neat little game which I'm sure I, along with a lot of people watching, would love to play to test our Shonen Jump knowledge. 1993 would also be home to another weird tidbit of Jump history with Michael Jordan Monogatari Hang Time, an adaptation of a book by Bob Greene, illustrated by none other than Slam Dunk's own Takehiko Inoue.
That makes sense.
Sadly, this largely seems to be lost to time, with it solely existing in Shonen Jump issues 55 to 48 of 1993, with only scraps of it available on the internet, but it's something neat I thought I'd bring up regardless. Shonen Jump Multiworld would be an event that would take place throughout 1993's summer to celebrate the magazine's 25th anniversary. It would be a sort of predecessor to the Jump Festa events that take place today, being an in-person venue you can go to learn more about the magazine's history, to see new artwork done by its artists, and to hear about upcoming info on new manga, anime, games, and merchandise. For 700 yen as an entry fee, you were free to wander the event and were given a little booklet with the majority of the information we have presumably comes from. There's some great documentation on this throughout the internet, but in particular, Manga Properties has multiple articles on the event, even going into individual authors, their comments, and special illustrations from this time. Manga Properties in general is such a cool site full of interesting manga tidbits and history presented in such a clear and stylish way. I should really mention them more, but if you want to read about this part of Shonen Jump's history in depth rather than hear me yap about it, I highly recommend you check the site.
Yeah, I'm unfortunately very lazy. That's why I watch YouTube videos rather than read articles. It was real a Kiryu vending machine. Wait, so what is it, like figurines? Bad news, it was all Kiwami 3 merch. I mean, the game is bad, but maybe the merch is good, I guess. It's still possible. Also, I think it's overrated, you know? Like, it's the latest thing we got, so people still really hate it, but I feel like in a year or two, people will look back and realize that we all kind of went too hard on Kiwami 3. Like, it has a lot of good reason to be hated, but it's still like a Yakuza game. Like, at its core, it's still kind of fun, despite all the bullshit.
There they have translations and articles on the event overall, including the map of the venue, which is the coolest thing ever. I'm such a huge map nerd, so seeing this scanned in such high definition made me really happy. Alongside featuring a lot of illustrations, the event even supposedly had a recreation of Ryotsu's police box from Kochikame and Akira Toriyama's manga studio, a showcase of some brand new 4-comma gag manga from Jump's current.
This looks like is it Charlie? You know, like a drawing with a lot of characters and you have to find a specific one.
Authors, and a theater to showcase anime, and a whole bunch of behind the scenes stuff on printing, as well as an area for souvenirs. This coverage of Shonen Jump Multiworld is fascinating, and I think it's
Kiryu wallet, Yakuza button, couple of shots of Kiryu doing the funny kick, poster of Kiryu with quotes plastered on it, acrylic stand of Munich. Where's Wally? That's what it is. No, Waldo. I think it's Waldo, right? Was it Waldo? Where is Waldo? Yeah, that's what it is. That's what it is. Bloody. Wait, no, it's Wally. Wait, is it Wally or Waldo? Oh, it's Waldo somewhere else. Okay, yeah. Okay. Why though? Why did they change the name? I'm confused. Because an executive of the book initial American publisher, Little Brown and Company, disliked the name Wally because it reminded him of Wallis Simpson. What? Who is that? Wallis, Duchess of Windsor, was an American socialite and the wife of Prince Edward, the Duke of Windsor. Okay. Oh, the intention to marry and her statue as a divorcee caused a constitutional crisis that led to Edward's abdication. What the fuck? What is this law? And that's the reason it's called Wally and not Waldo? You got a figurine? Awesome. Damn, I'm so jealous. I want to go to Japan.
It's a showcase of something really cool that's part of Shonen Jump's actual history that sadly not many people will know about. It's a drop in the bucket of cool little events or side things that makes up the magazine's history, and honestly it makes me question what these videos are and if the title History of Shonen Jump is really accurate, as for the most part what I make is just an overview of the manga that serialize themselves within the magazine with my opinions stapled on.
I mean, it works. Cell Saga based Goku action figure. Okay.
Self-aware of this from the very beginning, and I'm sure plenty of people might rather learn something new about Jump or its behind-the-scenes efforts.
I mean, we are learning. Like, there's so many mangas I haven't thought about here. Though obviously, sure, I would love some kind of series about the inner working of the magazine, but you know.
Its editors and internal structure, or the processes behind how it all works. Learning about that would be fun for me too, but I'm just one person who doesn't really know Japanese, and aside from looking through Jump issue by issue, I'm not sure where I'd find cool stuff like this, never mind catalog all of it in these videos. That being said, I don't want this to sound defeatist. Plenty of people enjoy what I make here, and so do I.
Frieren, Theo, and Son Goku, okay? I mean, good variety.
But I do want to prompt the idea in people that there is much more out there that's part of Shonen Jump's history than what I talk about in these videos. And people other than me are cataloging it in some very fun ways, like manga properties with this coverage of Jump's multi-world. My experience of Jump is just one experience, but I do hope it has helped foster a greater appreciation in the magazine, and if you've shared these videos, thank you so much. Please continue to do so, and alongside this, please share other stuff people have discovered or have been translating or looking into in regards to Jump. I think one of the coolest things I've seen and experienced while making these videos is getting sent translations or quickie little things through DMs or messages. So if you do research of your own on Shonen Jump, or translate old manga from the magazine, or have found something cool related to Jump, feel free to let me know, and I'd love to help spread the word about it.
Good stuff. Dragon Ball segment. Okay. We can pass, we don't need the recap.
No Motode, or Under the Dappled Shade, would last 25 chapters
and
3 volumes by Tsukasa Hojo, returning after finishing the hit Golden Age 80s manga City Hunter. Based on a one-shot called When the Cherry Blossoms Bloom, Under the Dappled Shade presents itself as a very different Jump manga, a slice-of-life drama following Sara Nishikujo, a girl who doesn't age and has a mysterious ability allowing her to communicate with plants. Throughout its run, it would go through many short episodic arcs, always involving plants in some way. It would focus on different characters and ideas like impermanence, coming of age, and general life. The highlight of the manga is probably the art, with Tsukasa Hojo illustrating a beautiful rural setting filled with vegetation, detailed trees, and of course, like the title suggests, the dappled shade, the way the sunlight is depicted as it comes through the trees. All of this leads to the manga having a beautiful, warm, summery vibe that fits its setting as well as the ideas and themes it wants to convey. It's unfortunate then that about half the manga has scans which are pretty abysmal. I'm not sure why, but they're very low quality, which hurts this manga especially as its looks and atmosphere are its strongest asset. Thankfully, the later chapters improve, but this is a manga that's begging for a physical English release. I was incredibly surprised by how mature the manga is. It's really contemplative, and it wants you to think and feel the contents of its pages, to impart emotion through its stories and the beautiful illustrations of flowers, trees, and plants. It lacks the bombastic elements of Hojo's prior works, though keeps some of the sex appeal elements, which are questionable since we're dealing with a forever young girl as our protagonist. This is touched upon in some great ways though, as it provides a tragedy element to the manga, as Sara can never grow up. The people she meets only know her for a short period of time, yet she impacts their lives greatly. I'm really happy Tsukasa Hojo opted to try something different within the magazine, as it resulted in one of the most unique manga Weekly Shonen Jump has ever serialized, and is worth a read even being so short and having some bad scans at the beginning. Totemo Lucky Man would be one of 1993's biggest hits, lasting 189 chapters and 16 volumes by Hiroshi Gamo. It would follow the unluckiest boy in the world, Yoichi.
Again, I mean, I like comedy, but I guess like everybody, I have preferences, and like all those gag manga just don't look very appealing to me. I can respect the creativity, but yeah, it really doesn't look like something I would enjoy.
as he dies when an alien crash lands on him, only for him to be found and resurrected by Lucky Man, a cosmic superhero akin to Ultraman who bestows onto Yoichi his powers and name. Now, Lucky Man defends Earth from monsters and aliens, not through strength, skill, or wit, but through the powers of pure luck and some friendship. Throughout the course of its run, Lucky Man would be joined by countless friends, and its initial episodic nature would shift with it gaining more arcs later on. It also sounds as if it did something similar to Kinnikuman by incorporating different ideas sent in by readers. Lucky Man sadly doesn't have any English translation, and even its 50-episode anime lacks subs. It's still a pretty interesting part of Jump's history though, feeling almost out of place with its art style.
I always forget that there's a good amount of anime still untranslated. I mean, recently we talked about Kochigame, right, which is legendary in Japan, and yet only now is there a team doing it. I think it's mainly because like fansub literally died for the last 10 years. As you know, the rise of streaming, basically like every seasonal anime kind of like got picked up. Fansub kind of died. But I think now there's still like a bit of a resurgence for like old stuff that is untranslated. And I guess it's not fully true that it died, because there's still like fansub that really love something enough that they will do like a better translation than the official one by Crunchyroll or something, which tends to be, you know, like the people doing them are like rushed, paid very little, so they're not always that great, right? They often don't even bother like translating like some of the text on screen. They only translate the dialogue. So there's still like fan subs, even though it's not what it used to be. But yeah, there's still like some obscure anime that are not translated. Yeah.
I think many people, along with myself, expected this to show up in the 70s or 80s and not in 1993, just with how it looks. I do find it really charming though, these simple designs are appealing, and I can imagine reading this as a gag manga every week. The anime even more so, with its added splashes of colour. It reminds me of something like Crayon Shin-chan, not very detailed but very expressive.
So be like Action Bastard and put your mouth on a sausage! From Action Foods, if you don't buy it, you'll die!
My
Shin-chan is fun, yeah. I've seen the first 4 movie at this point. Pretty fun.
Favorite aspect of Lucky Man is probably the mystery surrounding its author though, Hiroshi Gamo, who is mostly known just for Lucky Man, who's been on the record saying he can't really draw, but the most important part of making manga is love, a sentiment I really like. Behind the scenes though, there's theories that he's actually Sugumi Oba, the author of Death Note and Bakuman, alongside its artist Takeshi Obata. It's a fun little mystery that a friend of the channel, Manga Crash, has delved into in a video of their own, which I highly recommend watching since it's very interesting. The link to that will be in the description.
Oh,
DNA Squared
Angel.
would be Masakazu
Not Angel, yeah, Square.
Katsuura's follow-up to his popular romance series Video Girl I, lasting 42 chapters and 5 volumes.
I didn't realize it was the same author. I mean, I don't really know this manga per se, but I've definitely seen it before. And I think I had a few random volumes of it that I had found at some garage sale at one point. Yeah.
Just like DNA Squared would splice its hormonal melodrama with sci-fi elements with a concept that's a bit more overt. Junta Momonari, a mega playboy, would plague the future by fostering 100 children with different women, passing his genes on and causing mass overpopulation throughout Japan. So DNA operator Karen Aoi is sent into the past to cut off the overpopulation at the source by altering Junta's DNA to make him less of a playboy.
They literally gave him the Sangoku style.
The thing is though, the Junta of the past is pretty much a loser who gets sick at the sight of girls, which leads into a messy romantic comedy of errors, at least for a while, as DNA Squared quickly gets convoluted with magical bullets, time travel, and shape-shifting powers, transforming what would be a sci-fi ecchi rom-com into a sci-fi ecchi rom-com battle manga. Among plenty of other things, a monstrous DNA-sucking villain, a girl with a severe fart problem, and the time-traveling daughter of the main character joining the story who wants to make psychic super soldier babies with her own dad were not on my bingo card for this series. It's frankly a mess of a manga, drifting from standard ecchi arcs into battles with little grace. It's kind of sad too, as there's a lot of good ideas in DNA Squared. The Mega Playboy time travel plot is fun, and so is an ecchi battle manga as a concept. Heck, I even think Kotomi Takanashi's arc, The Girl Who Farts When She's Nervous, was probably the best part of the manga.
I mean, I always thought this was a classic, but from his description it's maybe not that great.
Delivering a message of self-acceptance while also illuminating, a bit like in Video Girl Len, the idea that nobody is pristine and perfect. We all have issues and do stuff like fart. The problem here is that it isn't coherent with the rest of the manga at all. DNA Squared is a mishmash of disparate ideas thrown together in an attempt to remain relevant in the magazine, which it did.
It's a shame after like Video Girl
managed to do for a time, but it would eventually be cancelled. Sadly, another major detractor if you want to read DNA Squared is the poor scan quality, which unlike Under the Dappled Shade, doesn't get better with time. It's so unfortunate that two of the best looking manga from 1993 suffer from having very dated scanlations and no English official release. On a more positive note, DNA Squared did get a 12-episode anime adaptation in 1994, with an extra 3 episodes being produced later on, which rearranges the story somewhat. It's an alternative if you don't want to read its poor scans, but it still suffers due to the manga's core tonal and structural problems.
Okay.
Hell Teacher Nube would be one of this year's biggest hits.
This is where it happens. I've tried the old anime, and I know there's a new anime right now, and I know it is very liked in Japan. I've again only tried like an episode or 2, and it just felt very, very meh to me. Maybe I should give it more of a chance.
Running for 276 chapters and 31 volumes by Sho Makura and Takeshi Okano. It would follow Meisuke Nueno, nicknamed Nube, an elementary school teacher who presides over Domori Elementary Class 5-3, who not only acts as their professor, but also guardian against all types of horrific yokai. Nube is mostly episodic, with each chapter focusing on a different yokai, their lore, and it roping in one of the class's students to learn a moral or lesson. The sheer variety of spooks covered is pretty immense over its 5-year plus run. There's some obvious ones you'd expect, like the possessed anatomical model, Kuchisake Onna, the split-mouthed lady, kappas, as well as a whole load of other bizarre, frightening or silly creatures. The Yokai of the Week aspect is probably my favorite part of Nube, as all of them are drawn really well, often having a full page devoted to showing off how creepy they can be. As scary as the events depicted in the manga are, I do feel its episodic structure, coupled with its lack of grace in showing off how the yokai affect Nube and the children, are pretty big blemishes on the series. It really is best to...
Again, I've only watched 3 episodes, but that's what it felt, yeah, like the most like generic yokai, portrayed in generic way, and you know, generic main character and generic side characters. It's your type of series. But yeah, I've only seen 2 episodes, and this is like super long running, so you know, it might really change eventually. Obviously, like a lot of series aren't great right away. They need to find their footing.
Approach Nube as a sort of episodic gag manga with more of a spooky tone, because often children will get sliced, diced, or brought to near death with not much of a big deal being made out of it. Nube even dies at one point when he encounters a Shikigami, only to just appear in the next chapter unceremoniously in an unexplained fashion. If, like me, you thought there might be more of a coherent narrative to Nube, with him taking out yokai in a more serious battle shonen style, you'll be sorely disappointed. Alongside its horror and gag elements, ecchi parts make up a substantial amount of...
Yeah, I mean, I like yokai stuff too, but, you know, I like when it's presented in a more creative way than just the basic legend, right? That everybody already knows, yeah. I think that's what it is.
Nube, which is something I didn't expect nor enjoy, considering the cast is a bunch of 10-year-olds and their teacher. For the most part, it's pretty goofy, but some jokes like Mickey having a rack of double D's at age 10 and wanting to be a Japanese AV actress when she grows up are a bit much. There's also the chapter where all the boys get turned into panties which the girls wear, which is just not something I expected at all going in.
Reminds me of that one 2-minute episode ecchi anime, where the main character is voiced by Sugita, and while the anime is called I Was Reincarnated as a Demi-Head, ASMR Demi-Head, you know, that's only like one episode. The other episode is like a bike seat, a cat, and at some point is like the things that baby suck on, except the girls do it for some reason. Yeah, reminds me of that.
I can see the appeal to Nube though. The light horror elements are nice, and I think on a week-to-week basis, this would have been really fun to read, with plenty of people I've met expressing their love for the series. It's not fully readable, however, with a big chunk in the middle being untranslated, but you can read a good 150 chapters or so if you want to. Alternatively, there's also the 1996 TV anime that ran for 46 episodes, or the upcoming new Nube anime, which should be out sometime this summer.
Yeah, this video is a bit old, but I think it's already on season 2 of it or something.
2025.
Maybe I should try the new version. Actually, I might have tried it already.
Nube would also receive a variety of supplemental media like novels, a PS1 game, and a live-action series in 2014. Several spin-off manga would also be released, like Hell Teacher Nube Neo and then Hell Teacher Nube S, ending as recently as 2021. There's also Reibashi Izuna and its sequel, which together would amount to 20 whole volumes, which follow a side character from Nube, Izuna Hazushi, a spiritual medium Nube encounters frequently. And to coincide with the new anime, the duo are once again making another new Nube manga called Hell Teacher Nube Kai, set to begin in Saikyo Jump this May.
That's really what it is. You just need to make one hit manga, and then you can just, you know, you can sell like so many mangas, but you can always just come back to the one that works, you know? Always.
Neural Network Melinda Fight may have one of the weirdest names and art style combinations I've seen from a Jump manga, and sadly it would only last 11 chapters and 1 volume by Tadashi Sato. Story-wise, it would be just as bizarre with its name, following Melinda Lemon, a robot from the future, being sent to the past, with a lot of jokes being born out of Melinda learning to be human due to a neural processing chip she has in her brain. Initially, it seemed to be more wholesome, with Melinda adapting to a new environment, but it would gradually shift into a battle manga, with it ending soon after. This is one of these older Jump manga I've always been intrigued with and fond of, just for how weird it seems, and I also think robot girls are pretty cute too, and I love these designs by Sato. Chodokyu Senshi Justice would be the final new manga of the year, lasting 14 chapters and 2 volumes by Kazutoshi Yamane. Dreadnought Warrior Justice, as it would be known in English, would follow Justice, a hero belonging to the warrior clan who defends humanity from an invading race called the Necrosis, with his Zan-made sword that has the powers to slash through both heaven and earth. This one looks super cool, having a very 90s looking style with sharp lines and big eyes. It also had a ton of really cool action shots, with the manga at one point even seeing Justice breaking the fourth wall, telling readers to flip their manga around so it could do a vertical spread. I've never seen something like this before. And there's something really cool about it that I think helps illuminate what kind of atmosphere this manga had.
I don't really like the
Balls
cuts,
to the
though.
wall bombastic action, and it's such a shame this didn't last very long.
Namco. Another game. Oh, fighting game this time. Yu Yu Hakusho.
Yu Yu Hakusho is a pretty renowned and beloved Shonen Jump manga.
Okay, so it's more of the recap of Yu Yu Hakusho. And then the roster talk. Okay, well, doesn't seem that interesting, 93, in comparison to 92. I mean, to me, again, El Teacher Nube I know is a classic, but I'm not really into it. So yeah, maybe a bit more of like a mixed bag, 93. So let's get into 94 now.
Throughout the 80s and 90s, Shonen Jump would only get bigger and bigger. Popular manga...
Okay, like right now it feels like it's on a mixed run. I mean, 91, 2 and 3, they haven't had much new big stuff coming up, you know? Like, I guess some of the classics are still running, but you know.
Would fill its pages year after year, but this golden era that it's found itself in can't last forever, and this year marks one of the last in Jump's so-called golden age. Big hits are still abound, as well as some smaller, lesser-known manga though, so let's not waste any more time and dive straight into Shonen Jump in the year 1994. To kick off the year, let's start with JoJo and head back to Moria, where we
Okay, let's pass. JoJo. Here we go.
one. I look forward to covering Say or Blow Away the Darkness, with the last 13 chapters in 2 volumes by Hirofumi Miyazaki and Shinji Maizumi. The plot followed an 18-year-old called Hayato who gets framed for his own father's murder. Now on the run, he evades the police as well as the culprit in a deadly game of cat and mouse to prove his innocence and bring his father's killer to justice. From the synopsis alone, it sounds a little out of Jump's wheelhouse, but the year prior, The Fugitive would be released, likely inspiring this due to its popularity. Jump, as we'll come to discuss throughout this video, was also trying out a lot of new things this year as some of its older series winded down. That being said, Blow Away the Darkness didn't appeal enough to readers and was cancelled, although it seems due to its fast-paced thriller narrative, it works decently as a short story. This would also mark Shinji Maizumi's last series in the magazine, with him working on a few smaller sports hits throughout the late 80s.
Okay.
Try as he might to adapt though, he would move on like many other artists. In a way, I think this manga is a great one to start the year with, as it's a distillation of what changes the magazine was going through. Older artists would either move on or attempt to create something new, which the magazine was heavily pushing for. Many of these series within 1994 would be aimed at a higher age group too, potentially because the readership had grown up with the magazine from children to adults. There is also a ton of police series that debuted in the year, so keep all of this in mind as we go through the manga that came out throughout 1994.
Okay.
Bomber Girl by Makoto Newano, another regular author at the time, would also return to try something new, though it would only last 11 chapters.
What a freaking design. Like, I don't hate it, but it's so... It makes zero sense, you know, like... The freaking belt, the short skirt, the boobs coming out, the shoulder pike, the shoulder pad with pikes, I mean... The freaking, like, latex glove, just... What the fuck is going on? It really sounds like someone who, in a character creator, put on, like, things from, like, different sets.
And 1 volume. Set in the year 20XX in the new millennium, we see a...
Look at this. She has spikes on her tits. Okay, actually it's big.
wildly different Japan full of diversity and crime, where bounty hunters aim to clean up the streets and bring evildoers to justice. And one such bounty hunter is Roshamon Emi, a bombshell who prefers to blow people up and ask questions later. Bomber Girl is this super zany action comedy hybrid that fully capitalizes on its main character being shamelessly sexy and prone to violence, and I love it to bits. It's so unabashedly fun. Emi is extremely likable, and seeing her beat down bad guys with her tonfas, which switch between being explosives, knives, or submachine guns, is especially fun. She also interacts with everyone very well too, with her immediately establishing herself as the type of girl to extort those she saves, and won't hesitate to treat people beneath her like the dogs they are. This is helped by Makoto Newano's fun and expressive art style. Emi's proportions and facial expressions especially give off this mad scrimblow energy, like she's more of a creature than a person. Most chapters see her and her
She looks like a sick version of Lina Inverse from Slayer.
glorified sidekick Guy tackle various terrorists belonging to an organization called Megalith, but for the most part this just allows the characters to have fun fights against various kooky villains. Weirdly, Bomber Girl actually got a US release through Gutsune Entertainment, with it being serialized in their Raijin Comics anthology. Something I haven't brought up in a while, but they also released some of Fist of the North Star, City Hunter, Slam Dunk, and other manga in English throughout the early 2000s. As to why Bomber Girl specifically was published in English, there is a small section in the English release that includes some comments by Noano himself, and it mentions him having a small cult following outside of Japan, which is really weird considering this is the only one of his works to get translated into English, aside from a few miscellaneous chapters of things here and there, but this was way after this version of Bomber Girl was published. So while there is a translation, it is old and discontinued. I managed to find the first 8 chapters online though, and they were a blast to read, but as for the last 3, perhaps I didn't look hard enough or they're stuck in its physical editions. Either way, I think this is one of my favourite cancelled manga from the period due to how over the top it is, and I recommend having a peek at it if you're able to find it.
Just the pikes on the tits are the best thing.
I'm also not the only one who likes it either, as Noano himself remarks that it's one of his favourite series, with it even getting 2 sequels in Bomber Girl Crush and Bomber Girl XXX. Then we get to our 3rd police series in a row with Midoriyama Police Gang by Shinobu Kaitani, lasting 20 chapters in 2 volumes. The series followed Kinosuke and Ginosuke, a pair of long-lost twins who got separated when Kinosuke tragically died in a river accident saving his brother, though he did not in fact die, and the 2 meet years later when Ginosuke is assigned to the Midoriyama police squad. Midoriyama being a part of Tokyo known for being rowdy, full of criminals and corrupt police, and in a messy turn of events, these 2 are reunited, with the police chief mistaking Kinosuke for his brother, who is actually a feared yakuza with a phoenix back tattoo named Grim Reaper Tatsu. From here on, the 2 swap places with a lot of jokes stemming from this premise, though it feels very well plotted out and has some pretty snappy dialogue. Couple this then with the setting and the 2 brothers getting involved in a love triangle with another policewoman, and it feels very unsuited for Jump, a sentiment I will wear out by the end of this video. Perhaps the author felt so too, as they would move on to seinen magazines, serializing some big names like some.
Oh, it's the author of One Out and Liar Game. One Out, I've seen the anime. Now that's an original baseball manga.
LAA, One Out and Liar Game after Midoriyama got cancelled. Jigoku Senshi Mao by Makoto Karabe would last 29 chapters in 2 volumes, being a gag manga despite the rather intimidating cover it has. It is this way for a reason though, as a portion of gags within the manga rely on the contrast between this super cute gag style and more serious demonic illustrations. The general premise is that the Demon King, Tanaka, is going to rule the world in 500 years, but before he does so he wants to first make the world a better place, so it's more fitting for his rule. Jigoku Senshi Mao then relies on evil characters doing kind or silly things to make you laugh.
I see.
As well as this, there's the aforementioned jokes based around art contrast, as well as plenty of slapstick or potty humor. The artwork looks super cute too, and I love some of these gag designs Karabe has done. Tanaka especially is both cute and menacing depending on the type of gag he's involved in, and he has this jester-like design I especially love. There's a cuteness to some of the sidecast too, like with Beast, the bear-like mascot that fills the manga, and then there's this cool looking demon girl who shows up now and then I think. Another thing I like is the smatterings of random English, like kiss my ass, no sexy, or even shit, boldly being printed onto the cover. I really mess with this dumb type of humor, and I guess Japanese people not fully understanding the English language. It's a shame then, despite some level of popularity, it only lasted 29 chapters, and Makoto Karabe wouldn't really go on to do anything else as big, though they did serialize plenty of other gag one-shots throughout the 1990s in Jump. Following the success of Hana no Keiji years prior, Tetsuo Hara and Sho Aikawa would team up to create Kagemusha Tokugawa Ieyasu, another historical work lasting 51 chapters and 6 volumes total, being based off of novels by Keiichiro Ryu. This would be a historical drama set in the Keicho era, following Tokugawa Ieyasu and their shadow, a perfect doppelganger made to make assassination attempts more difficult. But when the real Tokugawa Ieyasu dies, in order to keep his dreams of a unified peaceful Japan alive, the doppelganger initiates a dangerous game of bluffs, taking on the role of their deceased master.
Wait, is this the same Kagemusha that I guess Akira Kurosawa adapted? Like the Kagemusha movie? The one he did before Ran?
Throughout the story, numerous famous historical people and events are brought up, like the Battle of Sekigahara, but it takes some liberties which allows it to be really enthralling with its mix of strategic battles and political intrigue. The art by Tetsuo Hara is of course excellent as always. Backgrounds are hyper-detailed, full of foliage, buildings, or armies. Characters are of course in his style, but the adherence to realism is very respectable, and he's capable of drawing some very evocative expressions, which leads into the writing and emotions this manga conveys. Like Fist of the North Star or Hana no Keiji, Hara is usually paired up with writers who not only can leverage him for great action scenes, but emotional, quieter ones too, which adds layers to the characters in these stories, like
awesome.
Kenshiro in Fist of the North Star or Jiro Saburo, our protagonist here. I really want to reiterate how much I love Hara's art, and particularly these emotional scenes. He is well praised, but often it's just for his action stuff and level of detail, but the feeling he expresses with some of his art is very palpable and is something worth going out of my way to acknowledge. Furthermore, because we follow a non-noble, non-samurai character who is thrust into this position of leadership, it gets to explore the time period in an interesting way, questioning the samurai lifestyle and its codes. For the longest time, I haven't really been interested in Japanese historical manga. I think it's often difficult to permeate, but the country's culture and history is so rich, and when a story like this comes around, it's a joy to learn through it. It's an extremely solid manga that juggles action, humor, and drama.
As I said, now that we've done so many streams learning about the full story, I'm much more interested in the historical stuff because I will have the context. You know, I think it makes it a lot more interesting.
Very well, and thankfully it's been fully translated if you'd like to read it, which I'd recommend you do. It is, however, only an adaptation of the first of 3 books, evident with the end of part 1 popping up in the final chapter, so the story isn't necessarily complete, but it does close out good enough. There was a spin-off named Sakon Sengoku Funroku, done a few years later but in Monthly Jump, that follows a character present in Kagemusha, though it takes on a more battle-focused approach and isn't a direct sequel as far as I'm aware. Osama Waroba Hatari Teikoku no Gyakushu, or The King is a Donkey, The Bluff Empire Strikes Back, would run for 129 chapters and 7 volumes by Kokichi Naniwa, and like the chapter-to-volume ratio and name suggest,
YouTube? Am I still live? Is it my internet?
drama very
Oh, what the fuck? That's a new bug. Okay.
well, and end of part 1 pops out good enough.
Wait, where am I?
There was a spin-off named Sakon Sengoku
I don't know what just happened.
manga, having about 7 pages in each issue
I think I'm still live. I think my internet is okay.
without a conjoining story or setup. Many of these were literally composed of 1 or 2 images, often relying on puns or bizarre imagery. It's pretty minimal looking, but there's a real beauty to how Naniwa draws characters. Some of his bigger spreads look gorgeous, like this one of this lady and this dragonfly. It's nothing super detailed, but the artwork is so expressive and appealing.
It looks nice.
Of course, it veers into silly territory a lot too, and features many great expressions. Later on, little narratives would begin to form and jokes would take longer to set up, and with this came pages which were much denser with text. There was a real flexibility to it. Naniwa could pepper jump with single-page jokes, throw in a short love story arc, or even have a segment where he brings up his own bizarre ideas that he thinks should exist. I think this is also another example of Jump targeting an older audience. I'm sure some jokes here would cater to children, but the art style coupled with how wordy or dry the humor can be makes me think it gripped older readers best.
Get into this game. Wow.
After many years and a few side adventures into some other sports, Yuichi Takahashi would return to Jump in 1994 with a full continuation of his legendary series, Captain Tsubasa, with Captain Tsubasa World Youth Saga, lasting for 164 chapters and 18 volumes. Even getting the covers for issues 44, 45, and 46, which is 3 covers in a row later on within the year, showcasing its overwhelming popularity. This installment of Tsubasa would see the characters move on to the next stage, gearing up for the World Youth Tournament, with it initially focusing on Shingo Aoi's adventures in Italy before returning to Tsubasa. From there, Tsubasa with the All Japan Youth team plays through the AFC Youth qualification to secure their spot in the World Tournament, and in said tournament they would go on to play numerous heavy-hitting teams like Mexico, Italy, the Netherlands, and of course Brazil, where Tsubasa went to train after the manga's first installment. Overall, it's more Tsubasa. Yoichi Takahashi's art has improved, and the popularity of football at the time likely helped aid its rise as one of the most well.
We literally watched a video yesterday about the story of Japan's team, the J League, and their record in the World Cup, I guess. It was pretty interesting.
Known sports manga to ever exist. I covered the original series all the way back in the 1981 video, and since then we've finally gotten an official English translation for Captain Tsubasa's original run in the Shonen Jump app, so now more than ever I think it's a good time to check it out if you haven't already. I also want to quickly thank the comments from that video, as many people declared their love for Tsubasa from all around the world, which I think is again one of the coolest things about the series, its global popularity and influence. Hopefully it gets a physical release and World Youth gets translated later down the line too. For now it's fully fan translated, and it seems the short-term serialization from the year prior featuring the Dutch team also has a translation too, which I did miss. So if you're a fan of Tsubasa or want to experience one of Jump's classic sports manga, now might be a good time to read it from the beginning. Also, if you would like to hear more about football manga in Jump, I'd also urge you to stick around, as Captain Tsubasa World Youth was only one of 2 new football manga to debut throughout this year.
I'm sure there will be more later in the 90s, yeah.
Next we have the...
Oh, Kenshin is starting. Obviously, always with the asterisk this day, right? I mean, anytime someone will mention Kenshin, someone will say the author is a pedo. Which is true. I mean, there's literally like no way around that. Personally, I love Kenshin, and it's definitely one of those works that I think you can totally separate the art from the author, right? I think it's been a long time, like well over 10 years since I watched Kenshin. I haven't read it, by the way. But I think the work itself is just great, and you know, still stands great. But like, I wouldn't really fully blame someone for not wanting to read it. But again, it's a shame. It's a shame what happened.
Biggest hit of 1994 and a pretty important manga for Jump, Rurouni Kenshin, which would last 255 chapters and 28 volumes by Nobuhiro Watsuki. Kenshin would follow the titular character, a wandering swordsman who finds himself in the tumultuous early days of the Meiji era, one in which he helped to create through acts of bloody assassination as Hitokiri Batosai. Now renouncing his old ways, he wields a reverse...
Actually, I should rewatch it for stuff like this, because now that I know so much of the history of like this part of the history of Japan, a lot of the history that is referenced in Kenshin can get more interesting, especially the stuff with the Tsukiyoen flashback when he was Hitokiri Batosai and all that. There's a very similar character in Golden Kamuy as well. Obviously it's around the time of the Shinsengumi, and you know, like the end of Edo period, the Meiji Restoration, etc.
This bladed sword and vows to never kill again, with the series going at great lengths to question his morality, the nature of justice, killing, and swordsmanship. This is all seeped in one of the most interesting periods of Japanese history too, a time of great change that I know little of, but the little I do know of, the Tokugawa shogunate, the Bakumatsu period, and the Meiji Restoration, adds to this work immensely. But for those uninitiated, I think Kenshin does a great job at providing you with this compelling environment that is the setting of great change for the country of Japan. Initially, these ideas, historical concepts, and characters would be brought up in shorter arcs before the story would shift into larger arc structures, with the Kyoto arc featuring the infamous Shishio, and then the later Jinshu arc building on everything that came before to provide a satisfying climax. The manga often...
Actually, like, it's been so long that I remember... Actually, now I'm not sure, like, does the anime fully adapt the story? Because I only remember the Shishio arc. I don't remember this other guy. So it's like, either it wasn't that interesting, Oh, I just don't
It
remember.
involves a lot of small comedic scenes or downtime between the characters, training, relaxing, or just interacting, but at its core, it's full of battles, which I feel start off fairly grounded, but get more supernatural as pseudo-superpower abilities are used, which greatly increase the levels of spectacle in the manga. Characters also get more and more deformed as things go on, and lines between history and fantasy are blurred a lot more. Structurally, I think Kenshin acts as a big link between the battle shonen we know and love today and the ones that came before.
It's a good way to put it. Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say Kenshin is perfect, and again, I forget a lot because it's been so long. It's probably not perfect, and at times it's straightforward, but it's just like a very solid, shonen. Not one that has like some of the most standout or revolutionary idea, but very solid. Kind of like, you know, if you talk about one from the 2010s, I think of Assassination Classroom. Same thing. It's very straightforward, but it's just very well done.
From the earlier 90s and 80s. You can see the DNA in things like Dragon Ball, Dragon Quest Dai, and Yu Yu Hakusho, but Rurouni Kenshin for me is the first time the structure feels really modern, and as such I think it's held up really well in that regard. So it was solid, it had likable characters like Kenshin or villains in Shishio, and the setting was fairly attractive, especially with how it integrates real historical analogues to groups like the Shinsengumi. The artwork is also good, and it's rich in terms of themes and message to dive into. I bring all of this praise up because Kenshin was pivotal in holding Jump together through the incoming years. We'll dig into it a bit more as we go through them in future history videos, but we are at the tail end of Shonen Jump's golden age, and in a few years' time, many of Jump's biggest hits would end, causing a bit of a dark age for the magazine. Kenshin then would act as a primary big hit to Jump that it had in the interim between series like Dragon Ball, Slam Dunk, and Yu Yu Hakusho, and One Piece, Hunter x Hunter, and Naruto. As such, it's not just remembered fondly for being a good series, but also helping the magazine out in its time of need, and it would go on to inspire many future authors within Jump directly or indirectly. So its importance should not be understated. Kenshin has a ton of side media too, sequel manga, games, live action, and anime adaptations.
Oh yeah, I forgot. The live action are great. Huh? Like, recently I was saying, like, you know, there has to be a lot more great live action stuff that I'm not thinking of. When I was talking about, like, the GTO live action is good, and the Crow Zero, but I forgot, yeah, the Kenshin live action are absolutely sick. Like, if you're talking about good live action, watch the Kenshin movies.
With it being named Samurai X sometimes in the West, and usually I dig into these side ventures a bit more, but I'm going to just not this time as I want to address other aspects surrounding Kenshin instead.
There's actually also, like, I think it's been revived, Kenshin. Like, obviously despite what it's done, it seemed like it didn't matter because I think it came back, Kenshin. I forgot what it was called. Kenshin Meiji something something. Like, there was a sequel in recent time.
Going into making these videos, I knew eventually I'd have to touch on certain topics which may not be the nicest to discuss. The option to ignore them was also there, or to remove this section on Kenshin entirely.
I mean, literally no one ever is on it. Again, like, that's the first thing anybody brings when they talk about Kenshin, or the author of Toriko is the same thing, I think. And then anytime someone wants to shit on One Piece, they will say like, Oda is a friend of this guy or this guy. I mean, this happens all the time. And again, there's some important discussion to have with all this, but people tend to make all of this so simple and childish in its discussion.
Due to the author Nobuhiro Watsuki and what they've done. This is where these videos as a historical retrospective and my personal experience and values clash, but hopefully I can make this discussion informative or interesting in some way. How then do I discuss a work created by someone who has done something repulsive? How do I separate the art from the artist? I'm sure for some that's easy and you can do it without batting an eye. Maybe you don't care, or you just pirate Watsuki's work and more.
I mean, I used to think that, you know, it's always, like, I would always say, you know, I separate the art from the artist. I would say that when I was younger, right? But then I definitely reached some case where I didn't feel like that anymore. Where, you know, I was really weirded out by something, or, you know, and then my mind changed. I think I can do it, kind of like I just talked about, right? I still like Kenshin, and in my mind I really, again, well, it's not that I separate the art from the artist, because again, I think people are complicated. That's all there is to it, right? Like, the guy is an absolute piece of shit on one side for like the CP stuff, and on the other side, yeah, he's a pretty great mangaka with a great manga with a lot of like good positive message that are important for people. You know, it's just like a case of people being more than just one thing. Not that it excuses any of it. So I don't know if I would say I separate the art from the mangaka, or the art from the artist, but there's definitely some case where, like, yeah, I don't like something because I know what the guy has done, but in this case, maybe I guess it helps that I was a fan of this since I was young and before I knew about any of this. I don't know. I think it's never like just simple, like black and white, you know, either you do or you don't separate the art from the artist. And I definitely, as I always say, I'm a man of like 1,000 contradiction and what's the word for it? Yeah, contradiction, I guess. And I think most human are, right? I don't know. It's such a complicated topic, right? I mean, yeah. And I think everybody's entitled to their opinion, right?
All power to you if you do. But as someone who is an artist and who loves artists, loves art, and likes to know who and why people makes the manga I love, it's something I don't quite have the luxury of doing. It's something intimate and special for me because I know how much heart and soul go into the art people make. In this case, that's been tough to comprehend. Often I have to distance myself from that philosophy, or I just read with a bad taste in my mouth. But I didn't want to talk about Kenshin in a compromised manner. It is a good manga and was very impactful. This is undisputed and very important. But it's also my prerogative to inform people that maybe don't directly buy these volumes of Kenshin or any other manga he's had a part in creating, as in 2017, Nobuhiro Watsuki was found guilty of possessing over 100 DVDs of adult videos containing children. And what's more maddening about this, and the real reason why this is as relevant to Shonen Jump as it is because of how light a sentencing he got and the outcry of support he received from his place of work and his fellow mangaka. The fact that he's still making manga to this day.
Yeah, that's probably like the most fucked up thing about it. That, again, like, the guy is allowed to come back to Shonen Jump and did he even go to prison or something? That's probably like the craziest thing about it.
Including Rurouni Kenshin, and frequently you hear public support from some of the biggest creators in the field is especially
yeah, the people always bring that up about Oda, yeah. I mean, again, just a good reminder that like all of the artists that we love are just people, and most of them have skeleton in their closet and things that, you know, you would disagree with or dislike, or find revolting. I mean, all of them, you know, all of them.
Disappointing. I'm sure it's a mix of all sorts of factors as to why, personal, cultural, corporate reasons, but his defense is all disgusting, and sadly it leaves a huge blemish on one of Shonen Jump's biggest hits. I want to note that this is the only time I'll mention this in any large capacity, and for future series by Watsuki, it'll be a quicker mention. I've also purposely not made a Kenshin thumbnail and don't intend to put any series made by this creator or similar creators in the limelight, though they will get full entries like every other manga I cover. I also want to...
I think another thing that's great from Kenshin for me was discovering Judy and Mari. They do the opening of the anime Sobakasu, like the first opening, and I love that band, Judy and Mari and Yuki, the vocalist, because Judy and Mari eventually disbanded. Just awesome musician.
Mention that if you like Kenshin as a manga, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that, and there's absolutely no judgment coming from me whatsoever. With that out of the way...
I mean, it's an endlessly complicated subject, right? Yeah. And I think the point with it is that, again, for a lot of people, it just becomes like contradiction within their own belief. And that kind of breaks brain, and I understand, yeah.
Let's move on. Manyuki Babato Ware na Geboku Taichi would see Mangataro return to Jump after his disturbing but fairly famous Jump gag manga Chinyuki, and similarly it would be a comedy manga focusing on Mangataro's unique,
that looks absolutely insane,
grotesque art style. It would last 21 chapters in 2 volumes and would follow Nyan Nyan, the disciple of Man Man, who gets into all sorts of trouble, which often involves her getting cartoonishly beaten up or covered in some sort of gross substance. You might also notice that her design is actually really cute compared to how Mangatara usually draws things, and it's this contrast between super cute and horrifying kill it now that I adore a ton. Seeing Nyan Nyan come up against these grotesque pastiches of Journey to the West is a lot of fun, and I think her inclusion makes the more violent and dirty gags more digestible. The way she trips and falls, accidentally killing yokai, is always funny to me, and how she's treated by Man Man, her demonic mentor, also never fails to get a laugh out of me. I much prefer this to Chinyuki. A lot of jokes hit very hard, either due to the art contrast or because they're silly, like this horse being surprised in chapter 1 that Nyan Nyan can speak the horse language. It just mixes fourth wall breaking and absurdism in a very fun way. There's also a lot of parody involved, like a chapter focusing on Santa Claus or on Dragon Ball, with King Bokuri being a character later on, an obvious copy of Demon King Piccolo. 1 volume out of the 2 has been translated into English, so you can check it out if you'd like, and I'd recommend it if you want to see one of Jump's weirdest gag manga, as well as an artist with an unforgettable way of drawing things. Sadly, this would mark the end of Mangataro's reign of terror on the magazine. His works both didn't last that long, but he definitely made an impact with his bizarre stories. Fukashi Gito Kitan, or Mysterious Hall, last 10 chapters in 1 volume by Koichi Endo, known for his prior gag manga Miracle Tonchinkan in Jump. This would take a similar structure to the then serializing horror series Outer Zone. Both were episodic manga, but in this case, a person in each chapter who had lost all hope would find themselves in this mysterious hall. There they can purchase a range of mystical items that would always come in handy. Unlike Outer Zone, it was a lot tamer, focusing on telling humanistic stories which were heartfelt, with whatever item the people visiting the hall received helping them restore their hope. The artwork looks pretty nice, and like many series releasing from this year, it had an air of maturity to it. Sadly, it didn't pique the interest of readers and was quickly cancelled. Ultra 11 by Tatsuya Watanabe and Tenya Yabuno.
Man, so many just 1 volume, I mean. This is really like an era of constant flops after flop.
Last 10 chapters in 1 volume. Though it's important to note that this was not a cancelled manga, but a shorter work. Japan at the time was football crazy thanks to the establishment of the J-League in 1992, with its first season premiering the year after in 1993. The first 3 years were highly popular and successful, and this manga falls in between this period. This also likely explains a potential push for Yoichi Takahashi to do more Captain Tsubasa. What Ultra 11 is then is an instructional or educational manga on how to play football. It starts off with Johto FC, a youth football club who has good members, but they lack the cohesion to work as a team, leading them to lose every single one of their matches. The manga builds up to a rematch between them and their rival team of Nanban FC, who are much better than them. And their coach, thinking they stand no chances, brings in a football instructor to help them called Futo. From my understanding, Futo then teaches each character specific lessons, with the manga going in depth on the game's rules and strategies in an attempt to teach the readers how the game works and how to play, while also offering a light narrative. With all the players having learned new skills and how to work together, they go for their rematch and beat their rivals, tying everything up in 10 neat chapters. I always find works like this in Jump really interesting, as they divorce themselves from the usual cancellation discourse and are what they are. In this case, it also provides insight into what was popular at the time in Japan. I also really love the designs here. The style is a lot more reminiscent of children's manga. A few places point out that this wouldn't be amiss in Korokoro Comic, a magazine like Jump aimed at a younger audience. And since we've been mentioning audience's age a lot in this video, it's cool to see that Jump weren't completely snubbing their younger readership, as this was most definitely aimed at them. A fun fact as well is that the artist Tenya Yabuno would go on to do the manga for Inazuma 11, a very popular football mixed media franchise. I think it's really neat then that this is effectively a bit of a precursor to that.
That is cool, yeah.
Yatsu no Nawa Maria, or Her Name is Maria, would last 9 chapters in 1 volume by Munenori Michimoto. This would follow Maria, a violent woman who accidentally gets marked as a super teacher and goes on to showcase her unique teaching methods, which usually involve beating up delinquents or being a lot more forceful than most. I've heard it described as Jump's attempt to do a great teacher Onizuka-like manga, and while the female teacher lead is a refreshing idea, sadly it didn't seem to approach its humanistic elements well and was quickly cancelled. And at 9 chapters, it's one of the quickest cancellations in Shonen Jump history.
That's a shame. Like a GTO style with a female character could be interesting. For sure.
Following a similar quick fate, Tokyo Hanzai Monogatari Bosatsu Tofudo would last 9 chapters in 1 volume by Ryuji Sugihara and Makoto Iwasaki. This would be yet another police-oriented work that would see the rookie detective, Saint Date, struggle with the demands of his job as he believes too much in the criminals he's supposed to apprehend. It seemed to tackle themes of justice and innocence as they contrast Date with a much older and rigid partner in Kenzo Hirai. It's a work that exhibits many traits from a lot of manga this year in a police focus, it being a human.
Why all the police stuff coming out suddenly in that year of 1994? I mean, it's kind of random. Like, it's a pretty different genre that just suddenly there's so many trying to do it in 1 year. I wonder if, like, Jump themselves were, like, asking for a police manga or something?
Humanistic story, and it likely appealing to an older demographic, with it also being very by the books and a little outdated in terms of storytelling. It's no wonder then that it wouldn't last very long. Bakudan would last 17 chapters in 2 volumes by Akira Miyashita, which would be his final work within Jump, having been active since the 70s, and that same retro charm and art style is still present in this work, with it perhaps being my favorite I've read from him. It follows Baku Ryosuke, or Bakudan, a delinquent who vows to become the top yakuza in all of Japan, having never lost a fight even once. Like most of Miyashita's other works, there's a focus on manliness, and while a lot of his works present this in an almost comedic over-the-top way, I feel like Bakudan is a bit more grounded. It's still over the top and silly, of course. Bakudan does shit like punch through the special juvie stone walls to save his fellow inmates from a fire. He trains by punching live hornets, or even lifts a car with 2 people still inside. But I think there's a bit more restraint in this story compared to his prior forays into Jump. A big reason why is that alongside Bakudan being a Yakuza story, it also interweaves a boxing plot as both the 7th Don of the Aranka unit Akamatsu Umesawa of the Yakuza and Ken Tamaki, a retired heavyweight champion, both seek Bakudan to follow their paths as they see great potential in him. There's an initial exploration of what great strength should be used for, and it ends up being a great setup for Bakudan to enter the world of boxing. Sadly, that methodical story building approach and it taking over a volume to establish that it is
What? What am I looking at? What does it say? The hornet venom and the painkiller shot had caused a special reaction. Is Dong with a balloon?
A boxing manga likely was a factor in it getting cancelled in such a short time. It's a bit of a shame to see a veteran like this leave Jump, but I do think they had their heyday and times just change. This is also a manga you can read in full and has been translated, and is pretty fun as long as you can stomach some of the slurs and colourful language used in its translation. And another final series for a Golden Age veteran, Tsukasa Hojo's Rash would last just 17 chapters and 2 volumes. It would see Yuki Asaka return to her hometown to take over her grandmother's duties as the local penitentiary's doctor. As with most of Tsukasa Hojo's manga, there's a good balance of bombastic action, plenty of drama, and a ton of sex appeal. In this case, Yuki is a character who can't help but flaunt herself and has the gumption to fight back if things get violent, which is important, as Rash is honestly more of a police manga than a doctor one, with her often getting involved with various criminal cases that get out of hand. This manga flip-flops between so many elements, and the prison setting as well as most doctor elements are forgone to focus on crime drama aspects like in many of Hojo's prior series. Supposedly this is due to Hojo accepting more editorial intervention after his last series, Under the Dark Shade, was cancelled, where he focused on creating a story he wanted to make. As a work inside of Jump, like many from this year, it feels very unsuited. There's a lot of murder, serious talks on justice, and a big focus on cops doing drug busts. From what I've read of Hojo's series, this is the most strained. There's fun ideas and characters here, but it lacks cohesion, leading to a story that even Hojo's great artwork can't save. You can also read this one in full, as it has a full fan translation too.
Okay.
Midori no Makiba would be another big hit of the year, though one seldom mentioned with some of Jump's other big manga. It would last 150 chapters and 16 volumes by Tsunomaro, who was fresh off of completing his last animal comedy related hit, Mon Mon Mon. Midori would follow the titular little racehorse from birth, seeing him grow up and face various hardships due to his appearance, small stature, and the loss of his mother at the beginning of the series. But he would prove everyone wrong with his tenacity and skill at racing, which he gets better and better at as the series progresses, with him making new friends and rivals alike. While Midori does have an overall progressing narrative, it would be filled with gags, a lot of situational ones, or some which are just very vulgar.
Yeah.
Expect plenty of poop and pee here, which would be a hit with younger children, and I assume the horse racing elements, which many people liked, pulled in a lot of older readers too.
I don't know how much I like the contrast between the opponents being really realistically drawn and the main character, like the horse and himself, being so chibi. I don't know.
Even looking at the later races compared to the first few chapters, a lot of care and detail has been crammed into the art, and I'm sure the contrast between the gags and the more dramatic elements heightened them even further. Midori is an underdog story, and I think it successfully grasped the fundamentals of what makes a lot of Jump manga special. Its friendship, effort, and victory slogan. It's all here and well executed. What I understand though, the ending is sometimes criticized or pulled out as if it were cancelled. I'm not entirely sure of this, but the series did do well, even spawning a 61 episode anime in 1996 that was catered to a more family-friendly audience. Would also receive a few games, notably one on the Game Boy and one for the PlayStation. As well as this, it had a short 25th anniversary short in 2022, and as recently as 2024 it had a short net animation that ran for 25 episodes called Doko Demo Makibao, showing that it's still fondly remembered even to this day. Like Rurouni Kenshin, it's a pretty important work for Jump that helped keep the magazine afloat through its more tumultuous years, and recently it started to get a fan translation so you can read the first few chapters for yourself. And our last manga of the year would be Mind Assassin, lasting 28 chapters and 5 volumes by Hajime Kazu. Mind Assassin is a very odd work for Jump, following the descendant of a psychic Nazi assassin named Kazui, who lives in present-day Japan with the ability to destroy and alter the minds of others. From the first chapter's title alone, you can kind of tell that this is going to be something different. The One Who Carries on Sadness isn't a typical chapter title you'd expect from Jump, and its contents prove that, as it goes on to establish Kazui as a doctor who uses his powers to erase the bad memories of others. In this way, Mind Assassin is another humanistic drama, but from the 2 chapters that are available to read in English, it has a very somber vibe, as it tackles themes related to memory and how it can come to hurt or hinder us. That alone is a pretty mature topic, but couple that with Kazui dealing with a murder in chapter 1 with threats of rape being thrown around, child abuse in chapter 2 and him assassinating bad guys by destroying their minds, and him adopting an 18-year-old boy whose past was so harrowing he'd almost completely removed every single memory from him, and all of this adds up
it's all pretty brutal
to something pretty melancholy. The art helps a lot with this too, as it's quite simple or perhaps even clinical. There's a lack of filled-in blacks and a focus on dialogue and expressions, which gives it a very unique feel. It fits well as it's contemplative and unnerving. While it didn't last very long.
Thank you for sharing. Midori no Maki Bao and Umamusume. Okay. Okay, well, it's real. It's actually real. Alright.
Jump did manage to get some
Interesting.
extra chapters in Jump's monthly seasonal magazines and got a novel version lasting 3 volumes and 3 whole drama CDs too, with many people remembering it fondly due to how different it was. And now that we've run through all the new manga that came out in 1994, let's reflect on the beginning and ending of the year to see how things changed and what state Jump was in.
I guess
Starting off, we
pass that part as always.
have the big guns in Dragon Ball.
Okay, well, again, I feel like Jump is not in the best part right now. Like 91, 2, 3, 4. There's like so many manga that start and just die in one volume. Sure, like Rurouni Kenshin started, that's a good one. But before that, I think the last big one that started was Yu Yu Hakusho, and that was like 3-4 years before. Yeah. Those were all on Jump in 94, yeah. So I guess, yeah, as you're saying, there was a lot of big one, but as far as like new stuff starting, yeah, Kenshin is kind of the only one. So right now, yeah, definitely in a weird place. But I guess we're getting close to One Piece and a lot of stuff, so, you know, we're gonna get there. But yeah, I think I'll leave it at this one for today. Next time we'll go into the video called The Dark Age or The Fall of Shonen Jump. I guess things are not gonna be good for a little bit. Yeah. You think this is the golden age? Really? So far to me the golden age was like middle of the 1980s. It was kind of crazy. Yeah. But yeah, again, we'll continue next time. I mean, we still have quite a lot of video to watch until 1999. Then we'll have catch up, and then we'll have to wait for a new episode. I think I'll do maybe 2 more streams. And the videos are very long too. Like 98 and 97 and 8 are like an hour 13 and an hour 22. But yeah, fun stuff as always. Tomorrow I am doing another Japan stream. Tomorrow specifically, we're gonna watch an iceberg video. The Japan iceberg do not search. So basically videos about like subjects that you can't search in Japan because, you know, scary stuff. Should be interesting. So we're doing that tomorrow. Sorry you came at the end, so it was nice to see you though. Thank you guys for watching. Have a good day, good night, good morning. Check out Trentin Art, and I'll see you guys next time. See you.